we're not here trying to drum up emotion.
Sure.
I think we're trying to do exactly the opposite. Well, I think we're trying to build some critical thinking, right?
True. Good emotion.
Good emotion. Good conflict that, conflict dealt right builds every time. And it's a lesson I've learned in business over many years. In fact, my brother put that in my head, and when he told me, I thought, what are you talking about, man? But it took some time, and over the years I've seen that if you manage conflict well and you're courageous and you arrive and you allow the other person to bring their end, there's a good chance you'll end up in a much better position than you were in, at least with better knowledge on how maybe not to do that again or how to approach it differently. But I think the reason for my nervousness, and you must please forgive me, is pure and simple. This is not something I do.
No, we appreciate it. We appreciate you being here.
I hardly have a social media handle, or even I always joke about that. I'm sometimes on FaceTube,
We're gonna make you a celebrity, Miles.
The kids, I don't want to be that either. Man.
It's too late. You're here now.
I hear
You're in trouble.
You're the celebrity. In fact, I think that's the difference, right? Is that I really wanted to meet you. I wanted to meet you on the basis that, as I said, in seeing you in those podcasts, I don't do a lot of that. As I said, I stay away from the news. It's so full of stress and anxiety, and fear-mongering, and it's always the left or the right. There's no middle ground. There's no one talking about their actual experiences. It's all what could happen, and it's embellished, and I get horrifically anxious. I tried Facebook for a little while. I actually tried it for business to see what was happening, and I was on a board of directors, and there was quite a lot of social media attack in that space on both sides of the fence, and I thought to get Facebook so I could see this and try and kind of
diffuse,
get an idea of it, so that I could better handle it and understand where it was coming from, because that's where the voices are, right? They talk very easily in that space.
Of course.
So, my lesson with it is I got very few push notifications, or whatever you call it, messages from the groups and what I was looking for. And all I got was push notification, left and right, really just horrible stuff, that just made me go, this is just noise. It made me anxious. It made me physically turn it off, that I didn't want to see it again. Just pushing news, I mean, that's ultimately not the purpose of the damn thing, So, but here it is, pushing, narratives and concepts that either drive fear or anger, or they just spark emotion, triggers, doof, off they go. So, I'm not in that space, and I'm not looking for followers. And I'm very cautious of that. It is such an easy space. It's a vacuum. It's a vacuous place. People can say what they want. And whilst I think that's a good thing, and to a large degree free of any regulation, the governments aren't able to really regulate that. They can't pull it back. People say what they want. I think those conversations would be different if they were face-to-face. I think they would be very different if they could oppose each other, but face-to-face and not... Well, I don't think you want to end up in a physical fight, right? But a physical interaction is always better.
Yeah.
We're gregarious creatures, We're built to be together. We need each other.
So you wanted to say something? Miles is like, please don't follow me at Miles Parr on Facebook. Please don't follow me. I don't want to follow.
I don't have it. You can't find it. I don't think.
You want to say something?
Miles is going to be famous after this. I don't think he gets it. After this, it's done. No more private life. It's done.
I don't know about that. I think my first consideration is family first. I think, in fact, something I've been thinking a lot about is to say to you, if we look for... There's a lot of difference. It's easy to find difference in a world where we don't run as a herd anymore. We're not in that pack where you keep your head down. Otherwise, the authorities coming to get you. And that was true for everyone. Context of the world today is quite different in that everyone wants to be noticed as an individual.
Of course, that's how you get by or get ahead in the modern structures.
And we want to be recognized. I mean, your pronouns, your how you identify. I mean, I'm interested. How do you identify?
Is that a question?
Yeah.
No. I'm not the
And
guest
I'm not
here.
allowed to ask
You're
questions.
the
I thought that was the
interviewee.
agreement. I wanted to come see you to talk to you and ask each other interesting questions and see what the answers are. I'm not here to necessarily press an agenda. So I'm hoping you can tell me that.
And what are you, bro?
If
What do you identify as?
If Kamala Harris became president of America, I'd be very sure of my pronouns. But luckily Trump won, so hey, man, I'm a man. There's something you said off camera before we started, where you were saying there are so many people speaking to each other, white and white, black and black. The part that was missing from there was there are so many people speaking at each other, not to each other,
Absolutely.
specifically from different races, cultural groups. And you are like, we need more of this because this is what's going to change, hopefully going to change society. I've had a negative experience.
In that space?
You know, we've been podcasting as a team for the past two, three years, and I've invited people from different backgrounds.
Sure.
Intentionally so because I wanted to learn. I wanted the audience to learn. And I wanted all of us to be challenged of our direct or subliminal prejudices. You know, people from outside of the country that we call names, white on black, Zulu on Afrikaans, female, male, etc. And I've been deeply disappointed because where I thought I was making progress, we were making progress, I came to learn very sadly that people were just pushing their agendas. And
looking for the spotlight, looking for the microphone.
Yeah, and they were not listening at all. It's part of the reason why we're here today. 49 Afrikaners have left. Maybe more are going to leave. Number one, I don't even think that's a big story because I don't know what the number is. Let's say over 2,000 South Africans emigrate every month in this country of all races, job opportunities, and some come back, some don't.
100%.
But now because it's on the back of this propaganda and Trump and Musk and AfriForum and Solidarity, it now becomes this huge thing. And it could be that those 49 guys or the 23 families with their relatives were like free ticket to America. We can come back in December and braai, but let's go. I thought we were making progress and AfriForum would break my heart. I did not have an agenda when I would sit with the guys at AfriForum. I actually was, well, if I did have an agenda, it was I wanted ordinary South Africans, in particular black, to find out what AfriForum is about.
Sure.
We've got a community. We've got a cultural identity. We are trying to do for ourselves. We're not relying on government. We're going to build our own schools, ensure we have our own service delivery, take care of our families. I'm like, this is a beautiful story. It's the reason we travel to Oranje as well. If ordinary poor black South Africans can see Oranje as a story of hope and what you can do yourselves, rolling your sleeves up, every township in this country can become something special. Sadly, most of those people didn't get that message. They just got angry and they called me names. Cool. But I thought I'm going to exclude Oranje because the leadership there has actually been quite impressive for me recently. I don't like a lot of their politics, but I've actually seen how people like your Stradom have actually been sidestepping a lot of the propaganda around. They're like, look, there are farm murders and we're unhappy. We are Afrikaners and this is wrong. But we're about Oranje. We're about our people. AfriForum and Solidarity, on the other hand, would still carry on with these stories. Kali Creole, Aaron's Roots is not part of AfriForum and Solidarity anymore, but he started his own movement. He's doing a podcast tour in America. And even at times when there's disinformation, sometimes from the hosts, Tucker Carlson, Jordan Peterson,
sure,
Aaron's would just sit there and not dispute it. Of course, it serves a narrative, but I become saddened. I go and I sit with someone in Nigeria, I sit with someone in Kenya, I sit with someone in America. And they're like, oh, what white people are doing to you guys in Africa is bad. They horrible and I'm like, ish, it's bad, eh? The whites.
Nigerians say that. Kenyans say that. Did you say?
No. I'm saying imagine if I went on a podcast tour and I'm sitting with black people and they're like,
spun that narrative.
What the white people are doing is so bad and they're stealing your land. And I'm like, oh, bro. It's like, bro, you can't say that because you understand that the situation is nuanced. There's some of us who are privileged, and then there's the majority of South Africans. Ordinary, black, white, colored Indian South Africans just trying to make a buck and get by. And I'm sitting on a platform being like, yeah, white people are refusing to let go of the land and they hate us and then Miles is sitting there, it's like, I don't understand what's going on. Because now it's like, no, we need to sanction, we need to get rid of white people in South Africa. Penn has sat with us and has told us that it's a hopeless case. And you're like, that's heartbreaking, because I thought after sitting with the guys, discussing certain things, we were all trying to build a better South Africa. I would use an analogy like the Springboks to be like, guys, we're trying to find a Rassie Erasmus in business, in politics, that is going to say, look, we want to win games, of course, fuck. And Rassie is unapologetically a white Afrikaner. He's not pretending to be anything else. But at the Springboks, we are South African. We're trying to beat other nations. But when it comes to politics and the economy, the guys in leadership are not trying to galvanize one South African economy, one South African political. Cyril can try and pretend, but it's not that. The DA can try and pretend it's not that. In the economic front, we're really not coming together to say, let's build a world-class economy, find the Siakolisis in business, and go and fuck the world up. And they're like, oh my gosh, did you see the new leader of Naspers? Is this guy Utando? He's fucking amazing. And we're not doing it. If anything, they're pushing for division. So to what you're saying, the conversations are happening. I think people are not listening and they're not interested.
I've got some views.
Please.
But I think you've said most of it, so we can call it if you like.
Oh, shut it down and leave.
Well, that was a quick one. You said you wanted to keep it fairly short, so you did say most of it. You've said a lot, and a couple of things that I've learned in my life. Right, we judge by our own standard.
Of course.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing if you work it out, because again, the paradigms, the views we hold aren't always right. I've learned that I'll contradict myself in my life. I'll never do this. Over here, I've done it. And I think in this very chaotic and new world that we live in, with the ability to reach each other and converse, there's no regulation in that space. So it's easy enough to sow division.
Yes.
And then division works. Division's the easiest way to divide and conquer. I think it was Julius Caesar said that, right? It's the key. Divide and conquer. Keep us busy in our fear and our angst, so that we're not focusing. If a politician talks, it's a bit like this hand, right? Here it is. Look at this thing. Your refugee story. I actually thought, in terms of being a little bit nervous about being on your show and not having any real history or experience in doing this, I was a bit nervous coming in. Thanks, tons. I appreciate the heads up. But to arrive 2 days after the news, man, that's a really interesting fire-starting conversation, right? This refugee issue and what it means. And the words that get thrown out. What's in a word, right? Well, nowadays I think it's the words that break our bones, not sticks and stones. I think that's what we've arrived at. We can cancel people. Point is, it's that division that drives our politicians. This hand, I was there. This issue. Okay, so now we're talking, whether it's Trump or Cyril, talking about the refugees. Yeah, that's getting all the attention. But what's going on over here?
Hand is in the cookie jar somewhere.
Whether it's cookie jar or we're making a move, something else is happening. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I haven't seen a politician working in this space to fix that. It's not in their best interest. In fact, politicians don't lead anymore. You don't see. For me, that's the issue with the Julius. I think there's a charismatic leader that could change the world, but he chooses to sow division. And that could be a very that could be, I suppose, a very flammable comment to make. I'm definitely not trying to pick a fight with Mr. Malema. He's the most charismatic leader I've seen since Mr. Mandela, and there's very few in the world. But politicians nowadays, they're doing this for the people, for their constituents. They're not trying to pull those people in a direction and change their lives. They're really just aligning with what that group of people think and just grow it, just snowball it until it grabs more people. But they're not physically changing stuff. They're not grabbing it and shifting it forward, shifting views, shifting the way we think. And to some degree, I'm fairly glad about that because, what gets said on the left and the right, I think, I've met some young people that I've questioned, and these youngsters, by and large, all seek a revolution. And I then try and question, what does a revolution look like? What does a revolution smell like? Do we know that? Because I think if you know what those things look and feel like, you wouldn't want to go near them. And why do we want a revolution? I had a professional young person say to me that they'd like to burn it all down so we could restart. And I said, building out of the ashes isn't cool, man. Fix what you got. We've got a boat. Let's look after that boat. I love the analogy of a boat because I think a boat is a vehicle and it takes us from here to there. And it can be a tool in that journey. You can fish off it. You can move stuff from here to there, whatever the case may be. But it's an important factor. But, initially in my life, I was taught to believe it's all about the people, right? The people you choose in your boat. But COVID taught me a very real lesson in that first we must save the boat. First, we need that boat. We don't know what the other side looks like. We're on the sea and it's tumultuous, horrific storm that's caught us unaware. The whole crew with us and we're going. And we're doing what we can. Everyone's on the oars. They're trying to get through it. But fear stops them from shouting out that we're in trouble, that the boat's taking on water, all these good things. They're in the boat, and my job as the skipper of that boat is to save all of them, right? To make sure we save as many people as possible. But in doing, in looking at it like that, I realized that if we don't have a boat, we get all the people through somehow. We don't have a boat on that shore. We can't come back. We can't get back in the sea. And from a business perspective, remember, it's a business that had all these people in it, that you need to get across. You need to get through this very terrible thing that no one could give us insight on.
Yeah.
And, you've got your president saying, don't retrench anyone, keep them on. But no one's going, well, this is what we can do. There's some relief, I suppose. But again, difficult to get at, difficult to understand. I saw a lot of people just liquidate, switch their, sink their boats.
Yeah.
Save themselves. I think a lot of them are back in business, But I think saving the boat, and that boat analogy comes across in a lot of things. I think with the point that I make about the boat is that we need our people, but we need the boat. And if our country's the boat, we need our people to man it and help carry it. We can't do it if we're not working together, if we're not finding each other.
Could we argue that in what you're saying, the boat is the economy?
You can move that boat across several things: economy, culture, communities. But yeah, economy. I need people to help carry the boat. I can't carry the boat alone. In fact, my boat needs certain people in it. I've got to, I suppose, man that boat in a way that is suitable to the regulation that the government's put in place, right? I can't just choose a crew and then go and, arrive or go to sea. I need to, before I can go out the harbour, I've got to test that the people in that boat suit what the regulation defines. Otherwise, I can't take the boat out, right?
So a lot of politicians...
So whether it's economy or not, I think you can use the analogy.
So a lot of politicians and obviously business people focus a lot on the economy. To a point where even when democratically people want change, the argument is that the market's going to react. The rand is going to take a beating. We're going to lose jobs. And when you look at the history of this country, I'm going to try and summarize as briefly as possible. Mid-1980, Gavin Reilly, who's running Anglo-American, is not happy with the apartheid government and their reluctance to meet with the ANC and find a resolution. He goes on his own to Zambia. He meets with the guys there, Oliver Tambo, Thabo Mbeki, Paulo Jordan, and other guys. He comes back. He's not happy with what they want from a Freedom Charter perspective. They want to nationalize, right? He comes back and he asks his team, led by Clem Santa, please come up with scenarios. They come up with the scenarios. They present them to people. They become a smash hit. They eventually present to Nelson Mandela. And fast forward, I'd like to think those Anglo-American scenarios would be the backdrop for the CODESA negotiations. Later on, many black people who are fighting would argue that that was a sellout position.
Sure.
You had guys who were captains of industry who had made their money from apartheid, colonialism, etc., who were just looking for a way to insulate their boats. And there's a chance that the people running the boat, the National Party, might be out of power. Let's negotiate with the potential new skippers. So they did, and in return, they're like, look, we'll give you a share of the boat. We'll give you small boats as well, however you want to quantify it. And the reason why people speak revolution and frustration today is when you speak economy, we can mention, like you said, others, culture, the country at large, but specifically the economy. We don't feel like we're on the boat. We don't feel like we're benefiting from the boat. And you guys are telling us the economy is doing bad. Guys, we need to. And it's like, yeah, but you had a company. Your home is being repossessed. I've never had that. So fuck your boat. Hence, burn this thing down. And maybe from your perspective, if someone were to come with that angle, how do we shift from here where big business co-opted the ANC government to not radically change much and bring more people and create more boats so that the entire country wins? What becomes the solution if not to burn it down? I mean, kids are looking up to Traore now in Burkina Faso saying that's actually what we need.
Get rid of everyone. We'll do it on our own. We carry our own boat.
We want whatever boats with holes or whatever the case may be, we want to own them.
Correct.
Because
we should.
We were promised that we'd own boats in the struggle. And then afterwards, we don't see much change except a few black faces who are now Animal Farm looking like the guys that we had an issue with. So what do you say to those kids? To avert the revolution, because to what you're saying, how it smells and looks, it's carnage. And they don't know what they're wishing for.
No, they don't know what they're wishing for.
But then what is the alternative?
I don't think these things often do work like that. I think, that's why there's always a correction afterwards, right? After that revolution, everything settles down and hopefully there's some sort of equalizer at that point, or equal, not always. I mean, I think context, the context of the world, it's changed so dramatically in the world we live in and global context currently. I think where and how do we fit in the world? Are these problems that we experience here different to anywhere else in the world? How do we know? Do we go and look in those spaces? Have we had, there's no access to it, Penuel, as well, that people aren't getting global exposure. The only place you get it's in the media, right? Typically. So what do I say to them? It's not an easy question, Penuel. I don't think there's easy answers, and I'm not sure that I have them.
Yeah.
I'm happy to explore what it looks like and what we need to be doing. I think that, that Springbok analogy is not a bad one. Hey? I think what's been interesting for me to see there is a group of very different people, different walks of life, different everything, that have found a community amongst themselves.
Yes.
Yeah. And they've held together, and they're held together by some strong leadership.
Yes.
That won't allow division. Yeah. So there's some discipline in that.
Correct.
Yeah. Why does it work? Because there's a couple of formulaic kind of aspects that really matter in terms of a team winning, in terms of a community winning. And I think we lack a lot of that discipline. There's no accountability in this country, in the world, really, at a political level. We're not seeing people being held to account for what they've done wrong. again, both sides of the fence. You know, in the entitled space or in the privileged space, people play freely, right? The youth are seeing that. There's no value in that. There's no value in not delivering discipline, you know? And again, that can be a very emotive subject, I guess, because I think in the past, discipline was meted out very differently, you know, and pretty harshly. Today, we and especially in multicultural instances, what one person or one culture sees as good discipline, another might have real issues with. So how do you deliver it? But I think it starts with, what do we all want? I don't know about you, but in terms of people I meet and I, chat to or talk to, one of the key issues for me is trying to understand what is similar between us, whether you're a 80-year-old who's lived through one type of revolution, a 50-year-old, a 30-year-old, 15-year-old. You know, we all see things very differently. But ultimately, I'm pretty confident all of us want a better life, and we want a better life for our families. Finished and klar.
Yeah.
And so that's what I believe we should be striving for, is how do we get that? And we're not going to get it with leaders that continuously sow division.
Yeah.
Whether it's the DA that, holds itself up as a, I suppose the opposition to the ANC, it's semi how they define themselves, as opposed to what's their strategy. They talk about it, but does it resonate with all these people? And how can it? What's the ANC selling? Yeah. And how does it deliver? How is it going to deliver for all of these people when we're so divided? Economy, for me, seems to be the best place to solve that, right? If you're winning, more equals more, Penuel. So we need good regulation. You need it policed well. I think business can do the rest. And whether it's a massive corporate, government, they're all role players. You need them. They're part of that ecosystem. But what we're not doing is building our youth and giving them opportunity. It's failure of leadership, Penuel. It's failure to have one common goal of building our country. You show me one political party that is doing that. And it's pretty hard to do, right? But where else can you do it that's not, and I say this ignorantly, right? I appreciate that economy is also, is able to be racialized and segregated and has been across the world, Penuel. Those who have, trying to limit those who don't. It's just the way of the world. But if we apply great principles, business principles, to what we're trying to achieve, the metric that it'll spit out gives you actual data. You can manipulate that like anything, but if you're winning, you'll see it. And if we're winning, winning breeds winning. Yeah? The Springboks are able to take a narrative down into the provinces.
Yeah.
That I was watching an interview with him because I do find him particularly interesting. He's a really interesting guy. And that he said, I identify as this. But I'm a South African first, right? I'm here to be South African. I'm here to push that agenda. And in doing that and getting, a whole bunch of people didn't believe in what he was doing initially.
A lot of people close to him. Then they called him names.
Man,
yeah.
I'm exposed, like I'm sure you are, to all sorts of people. And to listen to the conversations was devastating, Picking Siya Kolisi as captain. I played a bit of rugby in my life, sport I actually fell away from for years. I stopped watching sport because of the lying and cheating, the stuff that goes on in the background. When Hansie Cronje was caught for, I didn't even like cricket, but we'd never seen sport, right? We'd come out of apartheid. We're kind of digressing here, but if we can go that way a little bit. When he cheated, I couldn't watch the game anymore. I'm not interested anymore. And it wasn't him alone. It was the fact that cheating could happen.
Sure.
And I feel a bit the same about my country, right? why give a damn if you know, it's so corrupt and it's managed in a way that, you know, you're never going to really get a good run at it. But back to the Rassi story, what he did, which I thought was quite interesting, is he stopped the provinces. He talked about it, you know, the kind of tribalism between the provinces, like you would get between Kaiser chiefs and pirates, right? Mm. And it's interesting.
I love that you use the term tribalism, by the way, to mention sports clubs. It's a nice word.
To be fair, they used it, but I buy into it. In fact, it's kind of where I'm getting to. Racism aside, this aside, tribalism is to a large degree where I see it all happening, whether it's amongst the black cultures, but even in the white, and then Indians and coloreds, you know, constantly left off the table, not talking about it. But by showing them a greater picture and then driving towards it and preaching and living it, and then talking to them about their plan and structure. Now imagine these are all your political parties. I think that, you know, if you align them by and large, and I mean, this is naive too, right? How do you get these guys to align like that?
It is naive. They're all trying to win. They're all trying to dominate. Why the hell would they?
They've all got their own narrative. Yeah. The only way is that more is more. Right now, we're fighting over what's left in the fridge, right? We're not putting anything back. We're not feeding that fridge. Now, if we're all feeding that fridge, there'd be more. There'd be more for all.
Yes.
You know, and that's what we're missing. It's short-sighted and it works to somebody else's narrative. The people in power. And I think that's, you know, keep people in the dark. Communication's a key issue, right? We don't communicate. Humans are getting worse at it. We don't greet each other. We don't look each other in the eye. We walk past each other in the street. How are we going to resonate with one another if we can't do that? And it's worldwide.
So tribalism in sports is easy to quantify.
Sure.
Tribalism in business is tougher for many reasons. And the tribes that we would sort of have, we'd speak about the Jewish community, the Muslim community, the Afrikaner community.
Yeah.
I think those are the main business players in this country. They don't want to share. And we don't have an economic Rassi, let's say a Johan Rupert, who sits all JSE listed company guys down and says, listen, we all need to pull together so that more is more. So let's do something. How do you get those guys to buy in? Because the little bit that I know, the business people in this country, the ones that are doing well, including black business owners, let's say taxi industry as a prime example, they don't want to...
They're not letting anyone in.
They don't want to let anyone in.
You know, I wanted to add there, and it's in relation to what you just asked now, Pen. Don't you think one of the fundamental mistakes that happened after 94 is that there was no other person after Mandela that was in between the two tribes, if you can call it that, whether black, white, simple term. There wasn't someone that was continuing with that
narrative,
with that debate between the two parties to say, gents, on this side, you guys have the money. These people are willing to work for you, but there needs to be some sort of an exchange. If you look at the history of the black people, what they've been through and whatnot, and listening to the Afrikaners as well, because their points are also valid, you know? So I don't you think one of the issues is that we didn't have another version 2 of Madiba? Because it seems like he was the only person who could communicate with both parties about bringing us working together. Don't you think maybe
so
that was the issue?
it goes back to Miles' point about leadership.
Yeah. I think that person was
almost
not
like
there.
Rassi leaves the Springboks and then things fall apart.
Exactly that. That what happens after Mandela, there was no one. After that, it's just toxic. You are this, I am that, you are that. Just pointing fingers.
You don't think Utabo tried? Or he didn't connect with the masses?
I think Tabo's issue was that he couldn't connect with the masses. Even when you read some of the books, they speak about one of his issues was that he couldn't go to the grassroots and speak to the people. He built a great middle class, but when it comes to the grassroots, he couldn't. He was not a Madiba.
And then Zuma, the other opposite.
And now
connects with the grassroots, but
now you've got
the economic drivers.
Exactly. Now the current guy as well. So I think we missed the Madiba version too. We actually,
Ramaphosa was meant to be that. but
Absolutely.
it's flopped.
That's what I wanted to say.
I
that
thought he
for
was going to
me,
be that.
well, it's an interesting thing.
Okay.
He catches a lot of criticism, Mr. Ramaphosa. And I know people who know him on different sides, right? I'm certainly not Mr. Big Business. I'm not Mr. Big Corporate. I'm kind of right there in the middle. We've been growing from grassroots. We grew from the ground up. And I can tell you, no one cut us any favors. Was I white privileged? Yes. Yes, it's something. If I can we segue a little bit? I'll come back to
go for it.
Mandela.
Oh, we'd love to hear
He was
this.
a fantastic leader that I think lots of people loved and hated, but certainly walked the talk and talked the walk. And, I think his charisma was unbelievable. And he, we don't have to talk too much about him. Everyone knows. Well, in fact, I think people are forgetting who he is, to be fair. More and more people don't know what he stood for. In fact, people are starting to almost go, this is just stuff I observe, right? This is just stuff I'm hearing and seeing, and young people talking, old people talking, whatever. I was segueing. Where was I going with that?
You can speak about Mandela. You wanted to speak about Ramaphosa and the type of leadership that we lost since Mandela left. That could bring both sides to the table and almost win both ears and both hearts.
Well, I honestly believed in Cyril, as a young man.
I'm sorry to hear that, by the way. There are many of you that have had your hearts broken. Shame, man.
No, I think
so sorry.
I think it's, well, I appreciate the humor, but to be fair, I don't know him. I have no emotion attached to him other than I'm really disappointed. And I'll tell you why I believed in him. He wrote our constitution with a guy called Rolf Meyer. You appreciate that?
There were a lot of, they were part of the negotiations, but they were involved in...
They led it, right?
Yeah.
And there's some really interesting stories in the background around that. Through Codesa, through Chris Hani, through all of those things where these guys got on with it. And to be fair, I'm not apportioning the success of it or the completion of it to Cyril. No, there was a group of people that worked together in that transitional space to resolve and deal this thing.
Yeah.
And he was spearheading that for the ANC, right?
And you believe the Constitution is a good document?
That's why it saved us, my observation.
Okay.
Yeah? I believe it saved us more often than not. Not at a low level, magisterial courts and the like, but at Supreme Court, High Court, that has held up. And I think that's done us a great service.
The Constitution? Okay.
You need that. You need a strong rule book, right? You can't play a game without rules. If you don't have parameters, then you're just punching into a vacuum.
Yeah.
So for me, the Constitution set that. And to be fair, was hell of a dynamic. You should read it. I haven't read it all, but I spent some time on it when I was a young man when they did it. And I just appreciated the fact that, that it was well thought out. It was really well considered. And sure, it had the ability to steal and pick and choose from various other systems that had been built and didn't work, or what did and doesn't work. But the long and short of it is, he's now arrived in a space where we lost him for a while. You didn't see where he went. He was doing business and he was apparently building up funds for the ANC or this or that or whatever the case may be. I can't comment too much on that.
Yeah.
But where he's arrived, kind of looking at it from the outside, trying to see how this is being played out. He's got a party that's split in two, from what I can see, possibly more. He's trying to play both sides and be president. And, there's arguments about who he puts first and who he doesn't. It's just the charisma he's lacking. He doesn't seem to punch at home, right?
Yeah.
I think he could get a lot done. He was at Nampo yesterday, Nampu.
Is it the biggest agricultural festival in the country?
In the Southern Hemisphere.
Hectic.
It's quite magnificent, man, to go and see. It's a real...
I've actually never been to Nampo. I'd like to go.
Let's go. Next year, I'll take you.
We must find a farmer with an airplane, because apparently planes just land there like crazy.
You don't want to arrive in a car. The key is to arrive in your helicopter or an airplane.
Brother, wanted to say something. You wanted to add something.
Time to go for it.
Yeah. Just wanted to chime in. So, just interesting discussion that you guys are sort of driving here. And I wanted to go back to I was born in 96, by the way. But I wanted to go
man. You're a little born free. Welcome to South Africa.
Thank you.
We've had some struggles, but hey, we're trying to fix it.
But yeah, I wanted to go back to the CODESA conversation. You mentioned Rolf, Mayor, Cyril worked together to sort of get, a lot of others, to get the constitution together and essentially stop a country that's on the brink of war, civil war, from getting into that space. And what I sort of want to pose to both of you is, do you think that 30 years later, 31 years? 31 years later, is South Africa capable of having that sort of dialogue between black, white, purple, red, blue, again, and achieve those results that we achieved back during the CODESA days, to actually stop a civil war? But in this case, to achieve results of economic growth and to achieve results of a sort of unity and cohesion within the different cultural dynamics. So yeah, that's.
You think we're on the brink of a war?
We're already at war economically. I think people are starving. So it's not a physical war where it's not Gaza, but people are starving, and economy is dignity. So if you don't have that, you're at war.
I once said this in a sit down. It was a gathering, and I said, if you look at the destruction of state-owned enterprises, that we had rampant load shedding, we're having water issues, our railway was fucked. I was like, this looks like the country's being hit by a bomb, by terrorists. And I was like, even some places that are war-ridden are not suffering electricity, water issues like this. So to what you're saying, we might be at a war. I mean, even the death rates, when you compare with Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Palestine, you'd look at some of our murder rates at the same level. You're like, we're not at war, but geez, we're taking a hammering. You want to hit?
I think that it's a good question and a good premise or good.
Because disrupting us speaking about Nampu and arriving in a fly, such a hater.
I've been.
We're definitely going there in a plane. I just want people to know.
I've been
Mariki van der Merwe ons kom met 'n vliegtuig. It's gonna be party time there with the darkies coming to. Sorry, Miles.
You'll be so surprised, man, at the black farmers that arrive.
That are there.
Hey, man, you can't believe.
In planes as well?
Yeah, dude, the biggest helicopter that was there the last time. I don't know who was in it, but it was. I've been invited twice.
A black farmer.
And
the president.
It could well have been.
Is he a farmer, that guy?
He was there yesterday, to my knowledge.
No,
I haven't been there this year. You don't want to go too often. It's I think it's not dynamic enough really. You go every 2-3 years, maybe you'll see the shift in some of the technologies and stuff, but it is magnificent to see, and you kind of get an impression of the size of that industry and what it needs to do its business. It's really quite
20 million rand tractors. Oh boy, sorry.
I reckon more, man. I think there's some stuff there that blow your mind. But yeah, it's to get there. The roads are pretty shocking. So
you don't speak French.
Me? Do I look French?
It sounded like you were about to say the roads are pretty shit, and then you kind of held back.
I swear like a trooper. In fact, it's something I'm trying quite hard not to do, because again, I think I have to represent my business. I'm here and my people, and I've got to be fairly conscious of that. But to be fair, the real me is I do swear quite a lot. Our business is not an easy business, right? And in that world, someone once told me if people aren't understanding, throw the F-bomb in. Just
a bit of French, just get them going.
So it is what it is. But
the roads are pretty shocking.
No, the roads are bad. So I think they really are very bad out there. It's right in the middle of the Millie farms, and it's quite something.
Shame, so you have no choice but to fly in.
Well, it's an interesting thing. You see every kind of aircraft. I think it's got some of the most. The busiest airspace in the country over those 3 days. They land a plane every minute, something like that. Small, big, doesn't matter. It's crazy to see.
No, you can answer Tando, sorry for deviating.
That's where we wanted to go, right? Was the question of can we fix it? Well, I'm an eternal optimist, right? I'm here to be part of that solution. That's my view on it. But leadership, Tando, back to Mr. Mandela, one hell of a fella. He sorted a lot out. He was able to show forgiveness, but also be hell of a disciplined or discipline in that space. But first he was charming and I've heard some really interesting stories about people that have met him and his ability to immediately make them feel comfortable so that he got the best out of that. And isn't that what we're trying to achieve here? I'm still a little bit on edge. You talking helped, Thando, so keep that up, man. But the fact,
Thando's asking, do you think it's possible to find arguably another Mandela, another Rolf Meyer Cyril to come and negotiate?
I don't think we have a choice. It's up to us, Penuel. We need to get rid of poor leaders. Why do
you think we have
Why do
leaders?
We suffer them?
Do you think we have good leaders?
Well, I just mentioned Mr. Malema. Could be a fantastic leader if he changed his stance, right?
Who would be the white equivalent that we have now? Is there anyone off top of your head?
That could.
Do we have brilliant white leaders?
You know, there's a couple of guys standing up. There's a couple of youngsters that I see that intrigue me.
Sure.
Do I know them well
enough?
On
social media or politics?
No, just in general in politics. I think what you want to do is you want to look in communities and you want to look in businesses. Forget about politics. I'm tired of politics, Penuel. It doesn't work.
Sure.
What's going on in the world? These two stories. Yeah. What's going on over here? That's what we want to know. We all know something's going on over here. We're all listening to this and dancing to this. Your show spends a lot of time on this. And understandably, because that's what's relevant, but it's not. It's over here. It's what's happening on the left. What's happening in that space? Who's chasing what? This refugee story. You know, really, guys, is that really the story? Mm. You know, is that really what we're watching, or is there a different play on? What's the play? Why is America interested in us? You know?
Why is America interested in us?
What's going on?
America interested in Afrikaners?
Well, they're making this whole story. You know, there's a whole story. It's gone global. Yeah. What's going on? Is there possibly something else that could be going on, Penuel?
Hit us with some theories.
Well, where's Mr. Trump at? What's he doing in the world? He's sowing a bit of division and derision. You know. You've got...
You reckon that's what he's doing? Is trying to fragment parts of the world so that America can try and dominate? Because the only way they can maybe become great again is to get the world to fragment.
Why wouldn't it? Maybe. It's an option, right? Who's fighting over... What is South Africa in the world? Where does it sit? For me, it's the most strategic... And it's not for me. I was taught that. Strategically,
in terms of location.
Critical part of the world. Yeah? What's going on? Why are we, China, Russia, America?
Fixated
what
on
are
us.
They after? What are they looking at? What are we giving up? What are we not looking after? What are we not protecting? So we don't give... You asked an interesting question about these communities that... tribes that don't give up their... their space. Who does? No one gives away anything. It's not our nature as humans. We'll share. People are tremendously charitable if they know there's a problem and they kind of like what they're doing if it makes sense to them. But in business, that's not business, Penuel. Business doesn't work like that. You talked about ruthless capitalism before, right? Mm. Capitalism is ruthless, Penuel. It's not. Don't sugarcoat it. It's not ever going to be anything else. But in that space, on that plane, it's like rugby's hard, right? You could break your neck. You could die. But the best players rise above. They take that challenge and their talent and they play their socks off. And hopefully there's no politics stopping them from getting to the Premier League, to the top of the table. I don't know if that's a bad analogy, but the only way we're going to share is by incubating and incentivizing. So recognizing people and leaders and businesses that are at grassroots, that can make a difference, and growing them without taking equity in them, incentivizing the guys that help build that so that they get better. Why is everything punitive in this country? Why must you first get shired before you can move forward? Why do we not turn it around and make it incentivize growth? Our BEE program is critical, affirmative action, critical, right? People will tell you 30 years, apartheid and economic privilege is a lot older than apartheid, right? And it's tribalism to a large degree. But there's these programs being put in place, but are they really building people and economies? No. I mean, they benefit a few. They're taxes, they're punitive. You're getting handled on it. It's hardly any kind of, I like organics. I mean, I take a lot of my inspiration in the world or in business or whatever from the natural world, because I think we've got so far away from that as humans, right?
Correct.
And I think the laws of nature are pretty harsh. And really, when we wipe out of our eyes, nature, we're fighting over a piece of land, we're fighting over a piece of food on that land, whatever, and a tsunami comes through and it's over, right? We're rebuilding, we're rethinking everything, yeah? We kind of get lost in our own politics. I've digressed. I do this, right? ADHD wasn't around when I was a kid, man, but I think
nothing wrong. At least we have it now. So, Debs, after Mandela, some of the things that were meant to be put in place. Of course, you've got your Thabo Mbeki, who is more business middle class, as you said. Then you had your Zuma, who was his deputy. This was meant to be a good marriage, right? You've got the grassroots guy. You've got the formal economic guy. You're like, hey, this is the dream team. They'd end up squabbling over each other. Another thing was meant to be the trade unions, who also kind of sold out because they were also meant to marry the ordinary workers with big business. Sadly, you fast forward today, a lot of the shop stewards today sit on boards. Today they have equity, today they have BE firms. So they negotiated their own equity in that. Ramaphosa sadly has proven that he's not the guy. And maybe to also try and answer Utando, I personally don't think we have the talent, of which I don't think Cyril and Rolf were talented, by the way. I don't think they were talented. And contrary to Miles, I'm now at a point where I actually feel like our constitution is a problematic document. It may have been used to avert a civil war, which is a brilliant thing, but it was a plaster. Good, maybe 30-year plaster, but yeah, the plaster is coming off and you realize the bone is still broken. I'm at a point now looking at our politics, the so-called GNU, the political parties coming, looking at the people that fund, of which the Oppenheimers are still the biggest funders of political parties in this country. Looking at the sellout position of the Freedom Charter and how even in selling out, the guys that were brought on were meant to be the new industrialists. So if Patrice Motsepe becomes Johann Rupert, of which his father Anton Rupert was meant to be the reimagining of Ernest Oppenheimer, Patrice was meant to, with other people, be like the Broederbond billionaires and then benefit black people so that we don't complain. But they failed. Is it because there's a lot of us? Is it because they didn't build the schools? Is it because they don't have the talent? We don't know. But they failed. And Ndu Traore coming in with a constitution that protects minority wealth more than fixes the injustices, because that's why the document is problematic. It's used more to protect wealth, inherited wealth, than to transfer, even though it speaks about previously disadvantaged. How do we avoid a war? How do we avoid a revolution, but without putting on a new plaster? And to what I was saying at the beginning or earlier was, I thought that was where the conversation was going. AfriForum, Oranje, Solidarity, white billionaires. I was like, you guys have been speaking to clowns that are just greedy and that just want money. There are some of us who are not trying to wear Gucci, who are not trying to look cool. We actually want this thing to fucking work. Peter Steph Tutoi, Sia Kolisi, Cheslin Colby, I'd like to think from a rugby background, are not chasing wealth. They're chasing the badge and honor and playing for your teammates.
Right.
The money then, more with more, comes as a result of. But these guys that you've got here, you negotiated with greedy clowns. And it's not going to work. Can we have another conversation where we're not speaking nationalization. We're not speaking free market capitalism, but we're speaking something else that is actually going to fucking work. For example, big business must build skill centers so that we have a skilled. Now, if you're scared that these guys are going to end up taking your children's business, then we've got a problem, because you don't want to come to the table and avoid a war. If on the other side we're saying, guys, go to school and study and buy South African, stop buying cheap Chinese clothing, and you guys don't want to do it, then you guys are also not coming to the table. So how do we build the systems, at least from a South African perspective, that push patriotism so that we can win? But I do not think we have the leaders.
We don't have
And at a time when it's crunch time, the people that you think are going to fight for South Africa end up just reverting back to their little tribal corner, and Julius does his thing, and the AfriForum guys do their thing, and the ANC guys, and Umkhonto is, and you're like, we thought we were going somewhere. But it's like, we're worse than 94. So maybe we're going to need something big. I'm just not sure what it is yet.
I think you're right. A big event would shift everything, like a war, like a natural disaster. You know, it's amazing how people can come together after a natural disaster, right? Of course. We're particularly good at it. You know, it's amazing to me how we're fragmented in some instances, but someone from outside of that space have a go at even your opposition.
Let a community be hit by a natural disaster. Weird people will come together to try and help.
100%. We're very good at that. We come together like legends.
Are we meant to manufacture an intelligent enemy?
Wow.
Maybe, as a nation. So in sports, it's easy. We want to win a World Cup.
Yeah.
But should we be manufacturing an enemy that's going to force all South Africans to be like, yo,
a common goal, a common dream? There's other countries that are very good at that. I want to go back a step. Leadership. There's a worldwide vacuum, Penuel. You can't argue that. Look around. People love and hate Trump. Yeah? Why? Because they've got nothing else. There's really no one. There's no one.
I didn't understand why Trump and Harris were the only candidates. There are so many brilliant. You know, when you watch American politics, they've had Vivek. He's Indian, brown. They had a Chinese guy, I forgot, he's a tech millionaire.
Yeah.
These are sharp guys, and I don't know what happens. They just disappear, and then you end up having your Joe Bidens get to the top. I don't get it.
90% of the political discussions over a dinner table, over a braai, over a beer. American politic in my world. Why not our own politic? Tired of the vitriol, tired of both sides. You know, I think when it came to voting, I went around my office to implore people to vote. Please vote. And my request of all of them, because how do I get to people that come across from such different context? Such different context. If you're older than 35 or younger, the world's different for you.
That's correct.
You see it very differently. Doesn't matter your culture, color, creed. You see it differently. And you came from very different ways of doing things. Please vote. Please vote. And vote. My suggestion is vote for who you believe will deliver what you most want. What's important to you? On your value scale, what's critical? So some people are prepared to engage on that. Let's talk about it, right? For me, in my space, remember what I said, there's one commonality to all humans. I want a better life for me, and I want a better life for my children.
Yes.
Let's go to that principle, right? So what delivers that better life? Who's going to do it? Is it ANC, EFF, DA, Patriotic Alliance? Don't know, okay? Each one very different from the other, each one pushing almost a different dynamic. For me, I look at what the ANC delivers in my world. I'm going, but there's no power. There's no water. There's no economy. There's a program of upliftment that is excluding my children. 100%. Can't go there. Yeah. which for me is back, at least there's a lesson we've learned in that somewhere in our past, right? Not to exclude someone 100% from something, because they're not going to feel invested ever. You can do the dynamic a little bit different is the key maybe, but the long and short of it is vote for who's going to deliver for you, not for who your community's telling. And there's a big issue, right? Tribalism. And the fear of being kicked out of this tribe and not making, I had guys telling me I didn't vote. So why didn't you vote, man? So, I actually don't believe in this one or that one, or, I'm fearful of the DA for obvious reasons. And I'm not so keen on the ANC because I can see they're corrupt or they haven't delivered or, whatever. And so, but why didn't you vote? You're not voting is handing it to these guys.
Young people didn't vote. We tried.
Jeez,
we tried speaking to young people.
Do you know how many?
And I appreciate that they were honest enough to say exactly what you're saying. I'm not going to vote because
they didn't want the community's scorn. They'd rather, I couldn't get there, I was busy, it was this, it was that. But I'm not voting because I really do actually want to vote over here. But if I told my community, and they will ask, and I will tell, and that's going to cause all sorts of havoc. That's not a good place to be. That's back to tribalism, right? Back to that issue of tribalism. And so, okay, what's going to deliver for you? Me, old white man, right? Got kids coming through, trying to build economy, trying to build a company, trying to build people in that company, trying to build different businesses. At a professional level, you don't need a lot. You just need an office. But at a production level, manufacture level, you need a whole bunch of other stuff, and it needs to work, Penuel. So what am I looking for? I'm going to vote DA because they promise me an economy and they promise me water and light. That's kind of the basics for me. Those are the things I want. You give me water, lights, and an economy, and I'm away. I'll make the rest happen, Penuel. Yeah? I'm industrious. I know a lot of people like that, and it doesn't know color. People who hustle. Just give them the basic ingredients and they're away. They're gone. They'll make it happen. For the 19, 20, 21-year-old, they want a revolution. Who are they going to vote for? EFF? Possibly, someone further on the left. I don't know. But the amount of youngsters, professional youngsters that want to vote at that stage, EFF, eluded me. I didn't judge it. I tried hard not to judge it. I tried to question. I don't understand that. Can you please help me?
But they tell you.
Some. Like I said, not everyone wants to talk about it. My intent wasn't.
Shout out to the ones that didn't talk. Never do that. Don't tell your white boss that you're voting EFF, Baba. You'll lose your job.
Doesn't bother me. Rubbish.
No, but you're different. For the XA. Hey, XA. Don't tell your white boss that you vote EFF. Be like, oh, look, I'm looking at the DA and maybe Action. Herman is pretty great. But XA, what's cutting, Baba.
I would be more nervous of my own community hearing that I went the other way. You can't be courageous in that space when your community is so, critical and has so much power over the individual.
Yeah.
Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm missing that. I come from a typical white family, which is isolated nuclear family, right? 2 parents, 2 kids, that's it. Auntie's over there, granny's over there. No one, who's looking after me? Who's looking after the kids when I go out at night? Not your family, not, Then you look at a social structure, which typically, most black communities and even Indian and colored tend to kind of fit within, where their whole family is part of that, which means that, the individual doesn't stand up so easy or could be ousted for not towing the line, right? I don't know. You tell me. I'm on the wrong path there. That's kind of what I see is that people, I'd like to think we've created an environment where we can talk,
Where?
In our business. That's the only place I can bring any change, right?
You are a bad example for the people that work with you. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's just a little side note.
Well, explain that, please.
You're going to mislead guys to think that workspaces are safe spaces. So they're going to go somewhere else and be honest and get burnt.
You can never, ever... 100 politicians would disagree with me. I don't think you can ever go wrong being honest, Penuel. And maybe that's the issue. Stop trying to hide it. Let's speak about it.
People are scared.
Of course they are. And if you get fired because you weren't honest, so what are you really fearing? Is that there's not enough economy to go from here to another business.
Do you think Peter Steph, Du Toit, Dwayne Vermeulen and those guys support quotas? Do you think they'd be honest to what you're saying on a platform to say that?
I think I think it's hard to support quota. I think that Sia probably doesn't want to support a quota system. Old story. He doesn't want to be seen as the guy that was placed there.
So you believe him saying that?
I believe that from what my observation of human condition is. That I think that if you told, I actually said it to Tando earlier, and I need to always get this one right, but what was his name? Abraham Lincoln, who's often touted as a great politician, right? But he said that you shouldn't try and strengthen the weak by weakening the strong. And I think there's something in that for me. I think that, this is my point, challenge is the heart, is where everything happens. Why are we all such victims about challenge and hardship and tough times? Why are we scared? Why must we be given anything? Why are we entitled to something? If we took that out of all of our headspace, yours, mine, that tribe, this tribe, said, I'm not entitled to anything. In fact, life is challenge. All life is challenge and suffering. And if I put my shoulder to the grindstone and I really just put one foot in front of the other, keep rolling, man. Just take it. And that's what we do. South Africans actually are doing that. By and large, they are living from day to day. And they're trying to actually, most of them, just put those blinkers on and go in a direction. And, I've gone, of course, again.
Do you think the white community would have been fine with Sia saying that he supports quotas? And they'd love him as a Springbok captain saying, we need quotas, they work, they're brilliant.
I think the answer is not, the question you asked originally was, would Peter Steph or one of these guys, who I don't know and have never met, so we're doing this as an example
of course,
of what we think we know.
Yeah.
But the fact is, if they're really honest, they'll go, we've got a problem and we need to be attending to it. Is quota the right solution? I don't think so. It's very much like the BE program that's in front of us. Is it the right solution? I don't think so. There's a lot of emotion around it. But frankly, it's regulation that is halting growth. It's not actually achieving what it should, which is grassroots development, economic development. Concept I had many years ago, and I take quite seriously even to this day, is that, for every human you hire that you employ, 5 benefit. And that can be more or less true depending on your own family dynamic. But if you do that and you say, well, we've got 1,000 or 40,000 or 100 or 10, there's 5 people down the road that are reliant on that thing. BE, in its current format, is not building people. Does the quota system deliver? We know that merit delivers. This is the argument, right? Everyone goes, merit-based. But how do you have merit-based when, it's almost time for the white line, black line story, hey? Can I give you a bit of a fantasy concept, which is relatively naive and maybe goes towards it's possibly arriving in the same place that you were just at. That maybe it arrives at the same question. But it was in my colleagues and I kind of having this type of debate. What's right? What works? What doesn't? How do we get there? This kind of analogy arrived in my head about 2 lions, 2 brothers. One has a black mane, one's got a white mane, right?
Lions.
The lions.
Okay.
That was my nickname for many years.
Khwezi.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what's up.
I've changed, man. I've changed. I'm not that anymore. But the point is that there's 2 lions, right?
One with the black mane, one with the white mane.
Yeah. So that's really the identifying, that's the difference. But they're brothers, right? and they care for each other, and they're on their plane. And this is, the intellects will tear me apart. It's just a concept. Yeah, it's a little fantasy to get to a place that says, what if? So these two lions, they hunt and their territories in front of them, and it's massive, and it's Simba, it's Lion King. And these two lions are out there, and they're hunting, and they do what they do. And lions do that, by the way. They hunt as a pack. And a magical cage falls out the sky on the lion with the black mane. With that cage, you can decide what that cage is from policy perspective or whatever. But that cage now puts this lion with the black mane in a compromised position. He's got water and some nutrients coming in.
Sure.
Because it's magic, right? But he's able to stay alive, but he can't stay in condition. And his brother, the white-maned lion, is standing there for a while, trying to scratch under the cage, trying to get him out, trying to do whatever. And this white lion decides he's better push off. He's got to go fetch some food and get on with it. And in all of that, slowly, his memory fades, and he's not visiting his brother so much, not bringing him any of the food. His black lion's just getting weaker and weaker. The black-maned lion, let's be clear. And same territory, everything carries on. We're a couple of years down. Black-maned lion's pretty emaciated, and he's not in a good shape. And the cage dissolves. It's magically gone again, right? And here he is. And his white-maned brother is joyous and joins him, and they try to figure out where they're going. And it's at this point that I ask the question, so what do we do? How do we bring black-maned lion back to condition to join us in our territory, growing our territory back to the tribes, right? And I'm going, so how do we bring black-maned lion back up to condition? Because really at our hearts, we love each other, and we know that two is better than one, and we can get this done. Really, if that's what we know.
Yeah.
Do we put a cage on the white-maned lion and bring him down to, reduce his condition, and let the black-maned lion have free rein and go and grow and do exactly the same thing? Is that the solve? Or is hunting together and appreciating the black-maned lion's not going to keep up all the time, and he's not, but he's on it, and he's relearning, and he's regrowing, and that magic that's there is magically gone, right?
Yeah.
It's gone. We're in a new world. And here's my question. That's the question. That's what we've got to answer. That's what we've got to figure out is, does everyone believe we need to put a cage on the white lion and kind of bring him down and let the black lion come up? Or do we, for me, the most obvious solution is to hunt together. But to your point, it doesn't happen. So how do we solve that from a business perspective? Incentive, man. Tax, put money back in the economy. Businesses will grow naturally. The economy.
Oh, I thought you wanted to say something. No. The problem we have in your analogy,
yes,
is
it's a weak one, so I'm expecting.
No, it's a good analogy.
It's a reasonable one. It takes a little bit of the charge out of it, right?
Your analogy has a white departure point.
Sure.
Is the first problem. The cage was put on the black main lion by the white lion, historically. And historically, when the British came here, they put themselves first.
Sure.
Afrikaners were second-class citizens. Blacks, coloreds, Indians would be right at the end. And the Afrikaners would obviously come together and create the national party. And then when they came into power, they also had their own form of quotas where they'd put Afrikaners first at the expense of, and they were even worse, I think, than the British in the sense that they literally put a cage. We can call them townships as an example for black people. Now,
100%.
The cage disappears. We call that the struggle in this context at the very least. And to your question, how do we ensure that these lions are hunting for the betterment of the pack?
Correct.
So someone could argue, let the black lion hunt on their own. If they fall down, they'll figure it out. They'll get strong again. Now that black lion is angry because the white lion is the one that put the cage. That's the first problem. So already the idea of working together is messed up by that. Black people weren't magically colonized and oppressed and exploited by foreign people that aren't here anymore. That was done by white people here. Number two, when the cage disappears, the black lion's not allowed to hunt the way he used to anymore.
Sure.
Because now there's private property laws, now there's a money system, now there's Roman Dutch law. You must speak English or Afrikaans. You can't roam free the way you did. And it's triggering and gaslighting every single day. Now someone comes in and says, look, let's create quotas and BEE. And we see some of the black main lions looking like they're getting ahead. Patrice, Cyril, Saki, Zikumalo, Lazarus Zims, like, hey, the lions are hunting, you know? But the rest of the lions are like, no, this is window dressing, fronting, as it were. Quotas, similar. And in the quotas, so from the white perspective, quotas are trash because there's a very talented white boy, brilliant, doesn't come from wealth. Dad was not Johan Rupert. He maybe comes from a caravan trailer park, got himself a little bursary by working hard, you know, went to the gym, would listen to the coach, ja meneer, nee meneer, and he became brilliant. And they're like, Jan, kom hier, luister, you know about the quotas, so unfortunately, Tabu has to be picked. And Jan is like, I wasn't there during apartheid. I've worked hard. I don't come from privilege. So you're planting like a seed of hate in this boy to be angry at Thabo and politicians. And I'm trying to explain to Jan that, Jan, I understand. But please understand where we come from.
Sure.
But Jan is like, nah, fuck this. Now, 30 years later, 26 years later, 24 years later, it doesn't matter. You've got a black Springbok captain. You've got Magazole Mapimpi, Lucanio Cheslin Colby, Kurtley Arendse, Damian Willemse, Bongi Mbonambi, all these guys, brilliant. And they win World Cups back to back. And all South Africans are celebrating. This is brilliant. The Lions are hunting together. It's beautiful. You see, says Jan's son, that's merit. That's what merit looks like. And Thabo's kids are like, Siya Kolisi didn't become a Springbok because he was brilliant when he was 12.
No.
There were policies in place that said, go create a little swart boykie from somewhere.
Sure. Exactly.
And you're like, yeah, but it's unfair. He must learn to hunt on his own. Left alone, sadly, from what we've seen, privileged white people who are beneficiaries of, let's call it past injustices, will not shift out of their way to let a talented non-white person, because of tribalism, a black person today, ANC, will not let a random black white boy in. Now you can't say that's racism, but it's tribalism.
Sure.
You are not my people. So when quotas come in and Gwede Mantashe can pick players, he's going to pick his son or his nephew. He's not going to pick Jan. He's not going to pick Thabo. And then they're going to tick a box and be like, but we've got black players. And then we're going to lose the World Cup, get beaten by Namibia, and we'll be confused. But transformation. That's the issue we have. That's what makes the example complicated. BEE is even worse. And it's sad because we focus on preferential procurement, tenders, and we focus on ownership, which is shares. Those are the ones that get the big spotlight. Whereas it includes employment equity. All the black kids that got hired, they were never going to be hired, just so the company can get government favor, as an example. The guys in charge are not Rasi. So they don't have swag, they don't have charisma. They haven't done it in such a way that Jan didn't make the team, but Jan is working with Thabo so that in future, Jan can easily play in any team without feeling excluded. I don't know how you do that.
Maybe again we're back to Rassi, right? We're back to a leader who got rid of the political interference above somehow. I don't
He
know
didn't.
Well, he's got it, but he's not making that the news. You're not hearing about that too much.
No, that's because Rassi's a pantsula. Rassi's got timing.
Pantsula. Yeah, okay.
You know, I wanted to ask you a question. This is where I keep quiet. Do you believe in democracy? And it's a loaded question because if Rassi was a politician, he would never have been Springbok captain.
Coach.
Coach, sorry. And we wonder who would have been and how they would be performing. Because this is actually the argument. I can use Rassi all I want.
Therein lies a little bit of the magic.
Sure.
How did he arrive there?
Sure.
You know.
So is this democracy?
Was it even on merit?
Do you believe in democracy? Because I can use Rassi as an example. It's cute, but Rassi wasn't voted for by ordinary South Africans. But in the same breath, economically, we've got this cognitive dissonance that poor Black South Africans, who are the majority, when they vote for these guys. But when they have to spend money, you see a completely different story. And how do we reconcile that so that when people have to vote, to what you were asking earlier, they vote the same way they buy?
Explain that a bit more. Extrapolate for me, please.
Debza's got a shop, Ibine cash and carry. Nice little shop his grandfather had, back in the day. Gareth Ackerman inherited a business from his dad, Pick and Pay, brilliant, doing well. White, Jewish owned. Spongile has to go and spend $100 to buy groceries, 500 Rand, 1,000, whatever. Now she has to pick. Like, say, where am I going to get value for money and get the... Like, no, obviously, Pick and Pay, good quality. She's going to buy Pick and Pay almost every time. It's worse today because she'll walk past Tando's spaza shop and go to Abdul's spaza shop, who's not even South African, was not an oppressor. He's a Mafigizolo who's, That's the decision they make, that value for money. I will go to China Mall and buy this t-shirt. Value for money, good quality. I know what I'm getting. I'm going to buy from Mlungu there. Then you go to the ballot where we're meant to be voting for, like buying water, lights, a functioning economy, things that work, good schools. Even when they have a little bit of money, I can study in the township, but if I get a little bit of money and I have to pick black school, white school, oh boy, I'm out. And how do we reconcile that? Because that's one of the tough mirror exercises for Black people who have given you this nice story. Yeah, but white people won't share, and quotas are the reason we have Siya Kolisi today, and BEE is helping you. Like, okay, white people are a problem. I hear you. But why do you keep
How about people
buying
don't
from
share?
them? No, of course. That's the
How about
tribalism
people?
argument.
I think this is, tribalism aside, you throw me a little bit, but the one concept was, like, let's go out for Chinese food. Should we even be saying that? That's where we're getting. I think, part of it is, how do we see through it? It's part of it. How do we see past that and go, I want to buy food. Why would I buy here or there? Not why would I buy from a Jewish concern versus a local or a foreign operator, that's local, right here, informal. Why, I think we've got to, part of it is, part of the proactive approach to it. Again, easy for me to say, right? Dealing with white privilege is one of the most interesting concepts because 99% of the people I push on that will argue that they were never privileged. They in fact immediately recoil and go, you get very big eyes and go, what do you mean by privilege? I wasn't privileged, or I've worked for what I've got, I've built this myself, And they miss the fact. They miss what it means. In fact, I'll take you a little bit away and then I'll come back to it because it goes back to the cage even. I don't think that those questions, that concept, even that different. And we're back to who put the cage, and we're back to, who are we going to and why? This is a cage, that's not. And maybe I'm not being particularly pointed, but the concept or the question I ask a couple of my colleagues just to really get the conversation going and possibly be a little bit of a fire starter is, typically of my white colleagues, I'll say, have you dealt with your white privilege? And you get a really interesting reaction. It's very uncommon to find people that will engage properly there. You've got to calm them down first and then talk about what am I actually getting at? Do you understand someone had one opportunity? I had two. There's two doors. I could take both. You could take one. That's privilege. And it breeds entitlement.
That is true. That is true.
Breeds entitlement. And a large part of the economically free, white, black, Indian, and colored, sit in an entitled space. So they don't enter the fight because they're entitled.
Yes.
They're not going to give up on that because it's easy. That's why we have wokeism and things, because how many poor people do you know talking about how they identify in terms of the pronouns? Very, very few, I would imagine. Sure. I don't have that many conversations, but I try.
Yeah.
And then my favorite question for my black colleagues across the continent is, can a white man be an African? And it is amazing the responses I get. Your culture is Zulu, right?
Yes. Oh, I used to be, but yes. I was raised Zulu.
So what do you now?
I've left. It's a conversation for another day.
You keep sidestep. You're a very good sidestepper, by the way.
But let's go with Zulu. That's my heritage. That's my family.
No, it's a concept, in terms of landing something there. Most of my Zulu colleagues will say to me, where were you born? You go, yeah. And then you're an African. Really? I didn't expect that from a warrior type human, steeped in this culture we fought each other and others our whole history. Yeah. So I didn't expect that most of the time, but I'm generalizing, right?
Sure.
In Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, I've typically got, no, not so much. And that's quite interesting because the dynamic in Kenya, Nigeria, Ghana, and the like is typically quite welcoming. There's many more years of independence. They've sorted out a lot of that. I don't want to say they've sorted out a lot of their own value, their own integrity. Who am I? Who do I identify as? I am a Nigerian, this is my country, and I've had that independence since the 60s, and, there's less, just go over to Lesotho, and you will be welcomed in to do business by and large. Whereas locally, South Africa, we're still in this space of, and I understand it, people don't share, people don't do the right things, people given half a chance will corrupt it, white or black, Indian or colored. Given half a chance in this country, we go the wrong way. We make the wrong decision. So,
do you believe in democracy?
Do I believe in democracy? It's a structure and a system, a bit like capitalism and communism. I think they actually passed their sell-by dates. I think they're done. I do believe in the concept. Benevolent dictatorship, for me, seems to have better traction.
So the benevolence is a gamble. You're playing the lottery. You hope.
This is the problem, right?
The dictatorship is what you will get.
Democracy is going to apparently deliver better than that. It's not going to deliver a dictator. The benevolence is a gamble. But
do you think Rassie would have been the Springbok coach if we had to vote as a country?
No. What do you think?
And how do you think the Springboks would be doing today?
Maybe bad, maybe good. Who knows? I think, again, leadership, it's a lottery. It's a lottery. Even in quota systems, it's a lottery. Maybe you hit the nugget, man. Maybe that guy that was brought in as a quota. Quotas existed. They were there. They were being used that way. But Rassie wasn't there. Rassie employed that, but somehow kept everyone out of that and built on it. Used it to build, and more is more. Success breeds success. Something in that sparked something for that team And they keep driving at the same narrative, right? Sometimes it actually gets like a little bit much. I wouldn't watch Chasing the Sun. I don't like nostalgic things and things that...
You don't watch Chasing the Sun?
I did. I ended up watching it twice.
Both of them?
Yeah. I preferred the first one because it felt more real and a little bit more naive and ignorant. And, it felt like you were seeing the real thing. It felt like the two, it was a little bit more...
We've seen this movie before. We've been through this before.
And you're hearing the same thing. I think you at the time had quite a lot to say about that. But, sport is a great propaganda tool.
100%.
And it is a massive unifier.
100%.
We could be using...
Though temporary.
Athletics SA lost its registration the other day.
Are you serious?
Yeah, they allowed it. That's poor management.
Jeez, while the athletes are doing so well. Shout out to Simbine and the boys.
We are an amazing people. Think about, and we do not celebrate it. We tear our heroes down. Somehow the Springboks got through that and changed the dynamic for a long time. That Springbok, remember, as a kid in apartheid, Springboks were a magnificent thing from the past.
Yeah.
We lived in an ignorant world, man. The state owned the media. You saw nothing. You weren't exposed. There was no social media.
Yeah.
It's not an excuse. But it certainly was part of that.
It was a reality.
Context, man. We miss context every time we talk.
Yeah.
People go this, then that. Back to that one consideration was in terms of the white line, black line. Did the white line create that? Or is that historic for as long as man has been man? Dominating one tribe over another. The world's changed, Penuel. We are becoming a global race. We all come from the same place, man. Why don't we consider that? Apparently, it's in Mossel Bay.
What's in Mossel Bay? You and I can speak this because we're both privileged.
Yeah.
In different ways.
To a degree.
So you have white privilege. I have, maybe we'd call it academic, which became
privilege is
economic.
Privilege. Let's take the white and black out. It's privilege.
For the majority of South Africans, it's still not
a reality.
It's unfair to ask you, and I know you attempted to answer, but I'm going to ask it again because maybe you'll give me a different attempt this time. I'm asking a white gentleman who's not under 35.
A lazy gentleman.
It's unfair because you haven't prepped. How do you reconcile an ordinary black person supporting a white business but voting for a black politician? And what should the conversation be to that ordinary black South African?
I don't reconcile. It's not my place to judge that, right? That's what democracy is. And I think if you're mature enough, you can have the conversation in the first place. Maybe we're not mature enough, Penuel, as a people, as the tribes. But a young black person wanting to vote EFF, I didn't marginalize that person. Maybe I'm different, right? But maybe we're so scared of the conversation, Penuel, and what it can bring. People have such fear. Everyone's trying to keep their head down and stay out of it. White people, they open their mouths and they typically come across really poorly.
Yeah.
They just...
With the best of intentions. It's actually quite sad.
Generally, the intention's spot on, and I hear it and I see it and I cringe. Am I now doing that? I could well be, man. I don't know. The intention was to meet someone to have a critical conversation. If you were doing that, didn't matter if that's a young person, old person, white, black, colored, Indian, doesn't matter. Have the damn conversation. But we don't do it. We believe in hierarchy. We put people on platform. We don't value ourselves. We don't value ourselves. It was the first lesson I learned in my business. What do I identify as? It took me years to figure out I'm an African, right? I was sitting in London in 1995. I decided to travel. Chris Hani was dead. Kodesa was a mess. Place was on fire. I felt like someone was sitting with a matchbox waiting to light it. I'd run away. I ran away from my country.
You ran away?
I went to go see the world. That's what I'm out, man.
Jeez.
An ignorant, naive kid. I arrived in London and it was like, wow. Where am I? I ran away from London in a day, man. Like, this place is chaos. Yeah? But when I came back, and I'd settled down and seen a bit of the country, and I really just backpacked around and worked as a labourer. I carried steel and did stuff, and I worked in a pub, and I did stuff to really just get me around. And I'd worked to make that money to go.
Sure.
when I was there, I met a group of people in a really quite dodgy hotel on the way out. It's all I could afford. It was terrible dodge. And we were talking, and I can't remember where the lady was from. She said, "Oh, I like your accent." I said, "That's cool." She said, "Are you from Canada?" I was like, "No, man. I'm not from Canada. I don't speak it. I don't know it." But that's really, hey. They all say hey, which white South Africans love to do too, by the way. Maybe that was it. Hey. The point was, that, like, I sat there listening to this woman saying, "You're a Canadian." And I thought about it, I said, "Oh, no, I'm from South Africa." And she looked at me and she said, "Oh, so you're African?" And, I'm a 21-year-old. It's just left a country that's in the heart of a transition. And a light went on, because, in my experience of that, black people were called Africans.
Correct.
Afrikaners were called Afrikaners. Was really quite confusing for me because that's African translated, but I'd never considered myself that. Never. And I think a month later I was home, man. I was done. I'd seen a little bit of it. It freaked me out. I thought, this is not a place for me. And I realized where home was, man. I knew my blood was here. Yeah, I just knew then. And subsequently I've been able to travel. I'm privileged. I've worked hard for that privilege. And in some places I've been given more gap than someone else, I'm sure. But in a lot of others, we've had to work for what we do. We're not recognized as a global corporate or a massive corporate. We fight for every job we get, But I have privilege, and I've been able to travel, and I've been able to see parts of the world, which I think is one of the greatest educators for humans.
That's correct.
If you can take people into other cultures and other places and realize that, A, there's a lot of stuff that happens the same or that has happened similarly, and B, that there's a lot of stuff that we need to learn from that's very different. The Buddhists taught me so much about just the respect for life. A dog in the road. Yeah, that thing's... Yeah. What, does that mean dog now, or is that something else? We use words very, we use words in a weaponized way, man. We've got to be careful. But those dogs, right? Yeah, they're wise. Thailand, that thing walks across the road, everyone stops. In a Buddhist culture, there's a real respect for that. There's other problems. There's other issues. But how is it that they can achieve that and we can't? Is it their religion? Is it their spirituality? Is it their regulation? What is it that drives people? What are the good things? So, I think if I could do a bit of magic again, it would be to, randomly pick some 18-year-olds up from every walk of life, every different tribe in this country.
Yeah.
Let's agree we're tribes. Let's respect our different tribes and agree that we're one country. I'll give you this in a minute, because that was something we arrived at many, many years ago and never really tried to launch. But I think it's part of the answer. But let's agree we're tribes, and let's get those tribes into a bus, a plane, a whatever, and take them for a journey around the world. Yeah? Drop in Lagos, hop out. Drop in New York, hop out. Drop in London, hop out. Hong Kong. See some of the big cities, see some of the small ones. See poverty, see wealth.
Yeah.
And every walk of life, right? And let's see how people grow in that.
Yeah.
A nice reality game, TV game, a TV game show, right? Might be the solution to this. I doubt it, but I'm just saying. I see it in my head, and I wonder and I wish for a really interesting outcome. I have been privileged enough to meet groups of kids and schools that do get it right, where there's kids from mainly in a privileged space, right? And this is the other problem, is that we keep talking in these two levels. And our biggest problem is this. It's not this privilege. This you can realign.
Yeah.
This isn't going to civil war in a hurry because too much to lose, man.
Correct.
This is. And this is what we're not talking about. Our poor mass of people, poverty-stricken, nothing to lose, can be incited to violence in a heartbeat because they have nothing. And there's a hatred being preached at that space. Some of it rightfully, man. We all go, oh, no, we can't talk about it. Well, no, you're wrong. for a second empathize with what's happened. Try. Empathy, something we humans seem to have lost. To try and understand where that human's coming from. In order to understand it, you first got to actually give them space in your head and your heart. To go, okay, an Afrikaner is like this. I was brought up in amongst an Afrikaner society and community. My parents thrust me into it. They couldn't speak the language. I learned a lot there, man, you know. And then I was sent from there to a Milner school, a proper colonialist school, where I loved my time, boys' school, hostel, you know, rugby. I never quite fitted in these things. I'm not saying I loved my time with the people that were there, because we were ignorant. We didn't know anything. We were having a good time. But the institutions and dealing these two very different cultures, going from an Afrikaans background to a very English-speaking colonialist type format, to then going back to an Afrikaans university. I wanted to go play rugby in an Afrikaans space. I wasn't going to go play rugby at all the English clubs, and very different dynamic. And I thought, if I'm going to get on with this, I need to go do it there. And I'm glad I have that knowledge and understanding. Again, I'm certainly not the oracle of it. I have my own view of that, and I am able to understand what the shape of an Afrikaner typically is. Moves a little bit left and right, and they are different, man. They are different. From the Cape to Gauteng, very different dynamics and ideologies, actually. White English speaking. You got it English speaking because we're not all English, we're not all British. You know, and these tribes are all divided, but if you know what they are, you take the fear away a bit. We're not having that across cultures. We're not white and black, Indian and colored, sorting some of that out and then celebrating that you are different to me. But our commonality is we all want a better life. We all want a better thing. So that's your goal, right? Is this the problem with it is it's all fantasy. As long as we have leaders that don't step up, and as long as we have we're not finding each other, and the poor mass is not being elevated. They're not coming up. You know, someone once said to me, it's very hard to see out the ditch. You know, when you're in a ditch, it's very hard to get your head over it and see out of it. So it perpetuates. And we blame it on the tribes, and we blame it on the two lions, right? There's a history to it, which is 100% reasonable. Quotas, are they the right thing? I'm not saying that they are. I'm not saying that they're not. I can't see how they've worked. Did it help the dynamic? We wouldn't have arrived with the Springbok team if we hadn't had some conversation there to solve it. Be interesting to ask Rassie what he thought about a quota system and if it did or didn't work. He lived it. You know?
Rassie is a Pansula, Baba. He'll give you a very smart answer.
Well, he's certainly a hustler, man. And that's what we need. Where's the hustlers? Where are the people who are not being victims, who will not allow the environment around them to define them? Opportunity is in front of you, Penuel. It's in front of me. It's what you choose to see. You know, how do you blinker yourself? We do, very easily. Opportunity comes past you every day. It's what you're looking for. What's in your head? Are your eyes open? How do I take it? You know, why is regulation in this? Why is it so hard to open a business? Why aren't, to the BE concept, why aren't we using incentives in that space? You know, incentivized programs to build young businesses. We're training a lot of people. We've got a nation of professional learners. I had a guy who was running one of those programs for a pretty serious company. You can't appreciate, I mean, it's too much money to even think about, right? That's putting people on programs that are training them to be administrators and management and understand business and give them commercial savvy, blah, blah, blah. But it's practical. It's not practical. Sorry, it's theory, right? They're not getting practical. So they finished that program a year in. The business has got its certificate. It's these things sorted. Where's the student going? Where's this kid going? There's no economy. There's no economy. We're fighting over scraps, Penuel. You know, that's the problem. What is there to share? The rich never do. How many benevolent billionaires do you see? that could be changing the world, man. You know?
They keep pledging, but hey, we don't see where these pledges are going.
Why would they? Well,
Jeez,
we could get
even
into-
during COVID, here's a pledge. And Oxe, where did the money go? Hey, we don't know.
big business did some of its best business in COVID.
It took you leaving Africa to acknowledge being African.
I had to go out of this place, which I'd never done in my life. I hadn't been across a border, hey? At 21, I was privileged, but not that privileged. You know, my father was not a wealthy man. He, in fact, was blue collar. He didn't finish school, but he worked his way up in the newspaper industry. In fact, from machine mind, which his father was, to management.
Swap colors, blue collar to white. Shout out to your dad.
It took him a while. It was tough, man. It wasn't easy. That guy used to walk. He'd walk home from the Star. He'd get a lift into North Riding, and then you'd see him come through the veld with his. I lived on a small holding in the middle of nowhere, peri-urban they called it, which basically meant no services. But it was a wonderful life. But I'd never traveled. I'd never seen. I was ignorant. None of us are ignorant. We're all good. We all got our own views. We're on top of it, man. We're all ignorant. You've always got something to learn. And I think you've got to allow people to change your mind. And travel does that. Travel, you go over there and you look at it and you're not, insecurity often gets shrouded in arrogance. Something we do. If you point at an insecurity in our country, whether it's white or black, English, Afrikaans, Zulu, whatever, often you'll get a very arrogant, abrupt answer. And it's because it's hiding the insecurity of that issue, the real issue. We kind of hide behind that shield of arrogance. That's the easiest way to defend it, is attack, right? You don't do that when you travel into someone else's. You go to someone else's house. I walked in here. I wasn't my usual, I wasn't not myself, but I'm slowly going to come alongside you and figure you out and say hello. And that's how we are. We don't just come in abrupt and arrogant. I think we, as South Africans, interestingly, have that bad image in a lot of Africa. A lot of people I've met in Africa, white and black business people, are often perceived as arrogant. And I honestly believe it's because we're insecure. We attack. Nigerians, very difficult people to deal with. They're very abrupt, eh? But if you don't know that, you just think this guy's being rude. And I'm saying because big people, boys, man, they are big people. And what do you want? Nothing. But the moment you answer with nothing, kind of back, oh, cool, you're welcome, and you go, okay, well, I'm learning here. It's easier there because it doesn't have the same paradigms and the same issues as we have that we live here.
Sure.
I don't know if that answered any of it, but
it took you leaving Africa
to find out I'm an African.
To find out you're an African.
I think I knew it. I needed the answer. Someone needed to ask it. No one had ever asked me that, because what am I? I'm a white, English-speaking African, South African. What does that make me? I don't have a culture, man. I'm a street dog. I'm a street dog. What's my culture? I can't go back to a culture. I can go to a religion. I can go to the economy. But I don't fit. Typically, there's a lot of people like that. White and black, that really aren't actually affiliated. So I'm glad I found out as an African, because that sits right by me, man. I know where I am. And I'm despaired by where we are in the conversations we're having. Because we're not solving the bottom economic issue that we see with the masses. And the have and have-nots is a worldwide problem, not being addressed by any politics. In fact, we don't look at it.
We're trying to find solutions for the future, and I fully agree with you that if we were to get more ordinary South Africans to travel, I think it would create a really, really great perspective for them. There was a time I suggested, maybe it would have been easier for you to acknowledge where you were. There's a time I suggested, I was in high school, and I suggested to our deputy principal that we should have an exchange program with kids in the townships. Because I find that specifically white South Africans don't need to go outside of the country or the continent to gain perspective.
Sure.
a lot of them struggle with empathy. Similarly, a lot of the poorer South Africans struggle with empathy on the other side because they've never spent time in each other's spaces.
Yeah.
They don't understand the dynamics of waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, having to catch 2 taxis and
Bathing in a bucket, man.
they don't understand the dynamics of, I know I've got money and I drive a nice car, but geez, the debt. And I'm one salary away from being homeless. And my kids are also depressed. My wife is also giving me stress. So, you know, to what you were saying, we focus so much on what's different versus what we have in common. And when someone's trying to tell you a story and you've never even spent time in their space, you'll never get it. And it becomes difficult to reconcile because everyone speaks from their departure point, and it sounds like you're crazy.
And may I add, which I'm sure will create a little bit of hype, but why do we carry on like victims? Every one of us. Doesn't matter if you're privileged or not. You go into a space of defense, and this happened to me, man. I understand what happened to you. It wasn't right, but it's happening to me, and it's this, and everything's pointed back. I went to this Afrikaans university in the early 90s.
Why don't you want to give it a shout out? Hey.
Why do you want it suggested? Does it matter? I think
maybe it was a nice institution. You went there for rugby.
Man, it was a tough place, eh?
Built character and grit.
It was hard. It was a very cold place, to be fair. Rauw, man. Rauw was...
Randse Afrikaanse Universiteit.
Oppie. Randse Afrikaanse Universiteit.
Hey. Shout out to the Broederbond. They built that institution. Now it's gone. Rauw University of Johannesburg.
What's Broederbond except a gang of businessmen?
It was a good gang. They delivered.
They were certainly grandiose, man. They certainly had ambition, eh? No question. Penuel, different context. That can't exist in today's world.
Why not?
It was different.
They were the benevolent dictators for their people.
Way less media, way less instant information. That's why I think politics has gone even further away, so that there's this puppet show that we watch all day long. They set it up for us to not look at the real issues. But Broederbond, whatever you want to say, they certainly built some pretty serious infrastructure, no question.
I interrupted you. You were speaking about your time at an Afrikaans university.
Yeah.
Because I was speaking about exchange programs and empathy and perspective.
Sure. And I walked into this place, I think on my first or second day, and they had a huge cafeteria, right? Huge. Fridges full of cool drinks, and in those days you could buy beers straight out the fridge.
Hey.
You could go, they had some chips and whatever, you toasted sandwiches and the like. But they had this graffiti wall. My father brought me up to be aware. He wasn't, I wouldn't say a liberal per se, but he was very aware, coming from the press. And he did his bit. He did a little bit in a very fascist kind of space, The security police came to visit him once or twice. It was very interesting. But I was aware of stuff. I was certainly not, a student shouting for anything. I was just checking it out, and I was aware. And there was this one bit of graffiti that someone had put on the wall that said, in English, "I'd rather be a killer than a victim." And in a country where Eugene de Kock and Vlak Plaas and the security branch and the kind of evil that had spawned out of that whole space as they lost control of this thing they had created, and it became evil, and it very easily becomes evil, right? The concept of killer versus victim was pretty harsh, but I realized I didn't want to be a victim. I never wanted to be a victim. And we're not taught not to be, man. Not to say that we should all be taught to be killers, right? But the concept of it is stand up. My father taught me on every occasion, you stand up. You're not defined by how you fell down. It's by how you stand up. And that's easy because I come from a privileged space. But I'm telling you, Penuel, daily, you're challenged, I'm challenged. Our challenges aren't that different. Poverty, whole different challenge. But in our space where we can bring change, where we can try and build economies and hold politicians to account and fix some of these things, we have to stand up. We have to take our opportunities. We have to drive towards not being victims. Listen to the narrative, man. Whether it's these guys leaving the country, whether it's the ANC, everyone's a damn victim. It's what happened to me. And I just know that someone also put this thought in my head many years ago is, your past is your guilt and your future is your fear. You go chew on that one because it worked for me. It made sense that, doing what's right now is the key. Always.
It's the one thing you have control over.
It's the only thing you can do. It's the only thing that why do I not watch the news? And it's because I have no control. I cannot bring anything to bear in that space. I can change my local environment. I can be part of that. I can spark it. I can try. Yeah? First, we must have empathy. First, we must be prepared to listen. We must be prepared to be challenged. That's another thing in the world. Leadership doesn't like challenge. But that's not good leadership. Over and over again, we taught that. Dictators don't like to be challenged. Yeah? That's where they become despots. But sometimes you need strong men or women who make very strong decisions to help boost a national morale and a people's morale. And winning, success breeds success. No question. Doesn't know color.
Thanks, Maz. Let's shut it down. Guys, closing thoughts. Thando, you can't keep quiet, bro. Come on.
There's the mic.
Yeah, look, I think overall a pretty interesting sort of engagement that we witnessed here. I think for me the most important thing is unity, man. And again, a lot of what was topical in your discussion was centered around privilege, of which I acknowledge that I myself am privileged by virtue of being able to speak to people of different races without fear or favor. It's something that was embedded in me from an early age in my life. You see, I always see people interact with Miles, and they interact with him. Growing up, okay, you're no longer Zulu, but you know what I mean with what I'm about to say. An older person needs to be respected, right? Which actually hinders your ability to engage and cross over, irrespective of our age difference, irrespective of how much of a valid point I have to put across, by virtue of you being half a century.
Please take it easy there. He's a young buck. Damn, man.
It happened fast, brother.
This is why Julius Malema was accused of being disrespectful in Parliament, because he was speaking out to elders. And he was like, no, but we're all mandated to come and serve the people. It can't be that when I speak, you tell me you're a kid.
Let's get over that.
And it was deemed disrespectful in African culture.
But exactly. But in actual fact, what that does, especially for young black kids that grew up, in a space that's very centered around that, is it hinders you. Your progression within whatever corporate environment that you end up finding yourself in is hindered by virtue of that, because you hold your tongue a lot. In meetings, you don't speak. When people ask anything around the room, you probably have 2 or 3 brilliant points, but you don't put them across because you feel this is not the space. So for me, I think the one thing would be just to foster that engagement and to break down those walls.
To change our culture.
But
it sounds like you're buying into Western culture now. Miles speaks about looking at each other in the eyes. And one of the other things with African culture is when you're young, you don't look at elders in the eyes. And in Western culture, corporate culture, that's deemed disrespectful. I'm speaking to you, look at me. Meanwhile, you keep looking down.
But this is knowledge of each other. This is what we need first, right? We can't find each other if we're not talking to each other. And I go, but I'm speaking to you. And I look down and say, well, sorry, I was taught not to.
So no one explains that.
No.
We just assume that everyone's the same.
This is what I'm saying, is that imagine in our country that we tried to put the stereotypes down, that we agreed, let's figure out what each stereotype looks like and celebrate it for its strengths and its weaknesses, its good and its bad. Try and somehow understand that better, because the one thing I did want to give you.
Wait, you'll give it to me now. I just turned Tando, sorry.
Let me land this plane.
Yes, you land your plane.
Sorry, Tando, that was me.
No worries. So I think I would like to reverse out of that narrative of changing our culture. You don't particularly have to change your culture. You can still be Zulu, you can still be Tswana, you can still be respectful in your spaces, but be adaptable to your immediate environment, which is where you're going from 8 to 5. That space doesn't need that. That space needs you to play. Vusi Tembewayo said this on one of your shows, where he said, in a corporate space, you're playing a role. So that space needs you to play your role. I'm a project manager.
Hey, shout out to you, bro. At least we're getting some money after this. That's what's up.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, I have to play my role in that space. Oftentimes, I'm dealing with clients and other people who I'm always the youngest in the room because I've been put in quite a high senior position early. But I've had to play that role in order for me to thrive. So that's the one thing that I'd just like to put across to whoever watches this is just occupy space.
And learn to be adaptable to a relevant culture in the space that you're in. Thanks, Tando. Debza?
I'm good.
Yeah, no, you obviously have nothing to add. Hey, your points are normally pop. You know, Tando said something. He said, I'm so glad that you let Debza speak on the mic because he's got such great points to add. I'm like, fuck that.
When was this?
Hey, it's not important. But I was like, hey, nonsense. At least now he's here to see that you have nothing to add. Thank you.
No, I've got nothing. I'm good. I'm good, sir.
Thank you. Keep it that way forever.
No problem, sir.
Amen. Sorry, Miles. We can close with you. So you can give us that nice gift that you wanted to show me.
It's not even a gift. It's
The
just a
Rans
thought.
Afrikaner badge of Eerste Span rugby of the 1960s. Sorry.
I wish I made the Eerste Span. The captain at the time was a guy called Francois Penuel.
Oh,
So it was-
the big boys. You were never going to make it. Oh, sorry. Were you a flank? What position?
Black eight, man.
Oh.
But it wasn't about that. It was about being knocked down, man.
Yeah.
If you really want to know. Getting knocked down, learning to value myself, stand up against those guys. They're like, it's similar culturally. There's an abruptness in their nature, right?
Yes.
It's who they are. They're tough people and very proud.
Incredibly.
Terribly proud to a fault. You know, we often talk about that as well together with my Afrikaans colleagues. But good experiences, challenge, man. That's where you grow. In fact, I like to point at that with a lot of the young people that feel that they're being very challenged, and understandably, it's a challenging place. Do me a favor, look around you. Who are your icons? Who are the heroes of the past? I think of a few, but Muhammad Ali, Nelson Mandela, Siya Kolisi, Bruce Lee, throw me one. Elvis Presley, icons. Look at their backgrounds. Maybe semi-privileged, maybe better than this mass of poverty, but certainly challenged in their lives, challenged to the greatest degree. Michael Jordan, these guys came through at Mike Tyson. Check out his background. You don't have to like them, but they were born in the heat of it, in the heart of the fight, in the challenge. There's something to be said about that, Penuel. There's something to remove the victim value or victim kind of thinking and go towards, this is my challenge. I must rise. I must stand up. First me, value me. I need to learn how to look at someone straight across the table. And, culturally aside, I understand there's some sensitivities to that, but I need to value me first, because if you look at people on pedestals, you're dead in the water. If you look up at people or down at people, you're finished. It's never going to work. And that's half our problem, empathy. To sign off.
Up at Nigerians and down at Tando. Sure.
That's a very
I got exactly what you were saying.
That's a very...
I'm kidding. I'm sorry.
No, but you understand what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
I love going to a restaurant with colleagues and see how people handle the waiter. Doesn't matter the color.
Sure.
Watch how they handle that waiter, someone who's serving you. Check it out.
I struggle with females. I apologize to all the women out there.
That is a brave comment, my friend. Hey, did you think about that before you said it?
Let's edit that out. For some reason, some women just, I don't know what it is in restaurants where maybe it's that insecurity thing. Sorry, I didn't ask. And I'm like, this person's just trying to get through work, man. They didn't cook the meal. You can send them to send a message. I'm not happy, but come on.
Best analogy, the best platform to learn business. Go be a waiter.
To learn humility.
Not just, man. Learn how a system works. Watch how business comes in and goes out. Watch how to manage your 5 tables. Spin it. Every table is going to come with different requirements and not work to the formula you were taught. Then you've got your production in the background that's maybe not playing ball, doesn't like you, has an issue, this, that, the next thing. You are not going to get your incentive at the end of the day if you blame all the tools. Sure. You have to be the front line. You are the salesperson. It's the best analogy in business that I ever had. I worked as a waiter and I worked as a barman many times in my life. And humility, man, let your friends or your colleagues or somebody you aspire to kind of be like arrive, and you've got to serve them. That take you down a notch, you know? And I think that's what we need a little bit. You know, I don't think that's the worst thing, humility. And rising to the challenge. Let's step up to the fight. Understand that that's actually what we're looking for. Life is not a Disney movie, man. Not anywhere in the world, not for anybody. Doesn't matter your status. It's easier. Money buys you freedoms, but it also puts a cage on you. Sure. We have lots of cages. We throw them out all the time. And I think that whilst we have a problem with our past, a massive one, that we're not really getting to the bottom of, perpetuating the issue, which is easy for me to say, I understand that, doesn't make sense to me. I think we have to, you know, there's a saying that says when you get to the fork in the road, take it. You know, make a decision and let's move. We're not having the conversation. We don't have a decision to make. We're just keeping our heads down and trying to stay alive. And these guys are getting all the media, man. They're getting all the attention because it's easy. It's easy to divide. It's so much harder to build. And I think that that's what we're trying to do. And I thank you, Thando, for bringing me here. I'm hoping that this, you know, that the objective of this, and I feel I'm getting a little bit more eloquent as I go along, maybe that I'm less nervous. I'm kind of excited it's over. I must tell you, it's nerve-wracking. But the fact is that I'm here to do business, man. And if you come and look at my business, while there's a top old white management structure, the intent is fully to bring people through, BE or not. You know, we in COVID looked at BE and said, let's stop whining and let's stop being victims. Let's make that challenge our thing. Amazing to try and imagine. I love circles because it's organic, right? Imagine that same spend that we were putting on those students through different training campaigns. And BE is not completing its circle. Yeah. It's never allowed to because we're not looking at it. There's no one's taking responsibility and accountability to complete the dots and get our circle completed. Correct. We're not doing that, Penuel, and it is amazing. You get into the room and at the risk of offending some of my clients, you can't have the conversation. It's siloed. Yes. You know, businesses are siloed and you can't have the conversation because that would mean really having to think about it and maybe make some courageous decisions. So
are you Russ in your business? Is Thando Siyakolisi? Just trying to connect some dots to create the circle.
I want to get some land, man.
Thando's want to get you the
land.
Thando's
certainly not a quota, man.
That's dope.
One of the reasons I stole him, man. I don't do that. Principally, I'm not a big fan of that. But to go and do that, principally, I don't think you should try and nick people from other businesses. But I kind of had a reasonable approval from the other business. But he was on an international trajectory. He's going for it. Yeah. And in that international train, he was right in the back carriage, right? He's a young man. He's a young man, you know, right on the edge of his trajectory, right about to pop into orbit. Yeah. But in that train, whilst the right train to be on, which is where all our professionals are going, man, they're all getting on the international train because they can.
Sure.
They don't want to go backwards.
They're leaving. A lot of our really talented black, white, colored Indian.
Yeah, when we talk about these refugees, genocide, let's just talk murder. Let's talk regulation. Let's talk disciplines. Getting that stuff sorted. Because too many people are murdered. There's not enough economy. We need effective policing, man. Finished. We don't want it because we've had this terrible history of what police and military looks like. But we're not holding people to account. Discipline. We're a very disciplined nation, really. When COVID stopped, everyone go home. Everyone did. Penuel. They all went home.
Sure.
The rest of the world didn't do it. The entitled world definitely didn't do it. They started throwing tomatoes at the politicians, you know. So I think a little bit of we've got a long road, but I'm hoping that today didn't offend anyone from my side.
Good luck to you.
Wow, thanks.
You'll see when the DMs come in if you're offended or not.
I'm sure we will have offended.
No, I offend. I don't mind. I'm talking for you.
Well, I've
mind.
not been in that space. I do mind from the perspective of what we're trying to achieve is a long game, and we're committed to playing it. But, you know, doing this, and I'm not sure I landed my plane, as Tando would say, particularly well. I was quite nervous, but I thank you for the platform. I thank you for the opportunity. And I would love to, you know, I don't need to do it in front of the public. I'd really like to do it in a boardroom with people who are like-minded. There's a lot of people with a lot of good stuff to say and who also need to have their minds shifted. But, you know, I don't want to upset the trajectory that our little business is on the basis that we see from top to bottom people growing. I would argue that is one of our greatest drivers. Do we have a good metric for it? Are we getting it right? No, not always. But we support our people. We provide discipline too, which is quite interesting because we have to, you know, deploy on that discipline sometimes. And people go, what happened? Oh, shame, poor that person, whatever. And you've got to explain it and explain, well, that's what we said we would do. And we delivered that. But in that little microcosm, you know, I really feel we've got some purchase, and that's what we're working on. And I'd like, you know, to invite people to work with us on that. BEE can be a magnificently successful thing, but it needs great leadership, and it needs the government to get out of the way because they've proven to be overly corrupt. You can't argue that. No one can argue that our government is not providing the platform.
True.
You know, if we keep putting it in the fridge and everyone keeps taking it out, it's not growing.
Everyone's going to be listening to you asking, but what business does this guy run? I keep hearing business. What business, Baba?
I started I thought we were wrapping up.
We are, but Tangiti now.
So when
I wanted to say, a plea to business as you're speaking about Utando. And one of the reasons South African rugby is so healthy and is going to be healthy for a long time, we still have quotas in rugby.
Sure.
I've got mixed feelings around quotas. I fully understand how it can be demeaning to a recipient.
Again, it's good and bad.
A lot of the kids that are being picked by white schools, good rugby schools, they are picking the best black colored kids to put them on platforms. So my plea to business, while you're kicking and screaming about BEE and it's rubbish, sure, that's okay. But until you've changed it or we found something better, where you have to pick non-white talent, please go find good talent. And give them a platform to shine because they can make you become really brilliant. Siya Kolisi has taken the Springboks to places where they probably would have never gotten to with a white captain, sadly. It's just what it is. Some of the places and the doors he's opened would have never been opened. And if you can have that type of positive attitude and you give a guy a platform, a talented guy, you'd be surprised at what it will do for your business.
And what happened with that Siya thing, I want to come back a step just to the fact that it's surprisingly hard to find good talent, doesn't matter what color.
Yeah, that's a fact.
Yeah, it's really doesn't matter what color.
Yeah.
We've got a really dynamic HR team, and I appreciate how they deal. They in fact call themselves the people team, which I dig, I think that works. But, where was I going with it?
What business are you in? People want to know.
We've got various. I mean,
you were saying you started.
We've built up an ecosystem of businesses through COVID. We actually broke the trajectory we were on into. We looked at, what part of the value chain do we see? Or someone asked me, what part of the value chain do you own? It's business about ownership, right? Mm. It's the biggest land grab. That's the game. You've got to grow. Business capitalism does not have a limit. It has to grow. It's infinite. It's why it's broken, man. Actually, it broke in the 80s. Again, we digress. We don't need to go there. We need to wrap up.
What business are you in? Stop sidestepping, Baba. This is not raw rugby.
Well, I started, I left school, I left varsity and I was very disillusioned, right? And I couldn't get a job. I went for many. I studied development. I studied political, social, and economic development. I really thought I'd walk straight out into the RDP and, kind of sort that out, right, and be involved. But I went for, 40-something interviews in different spaces, and I had no experience, and I didn't fit the category, and I wasn't, trained right, and da-da-da.
So RDP was the macroeconomic policy of the ANC government at the time.
RDP type program, so Reconstruction Development Program.
Sure.
And it was coming out at the same time as I found this course. I mean, I buggered around a bit in varsity, to be fair, which the entitled can do. This is, again, part of what you've got to realize is that I was actually at a graduation yesterday for my son.
Congrats to your son and to the family.
Absolute. Well, I'm particularly proud of the kid because he, both my kids, in fact, struggled when they were young. That's possibly part of my gene, I think. But both excelled, by the end of it, just in the right environment, the right incubation. They didn't go to the same school. I didn't want it. And I think it was the right decision because they, my wife and I decided that. And they came out, particularly well-versed South Africans. Not in a hurry to go over and live somewhere else. And in fact, I'd love to entice everyone back. There would be an incentive, get people back. Now that all of these young intellects have left and learned, come home.
Back.
Come home and we'll tax. I saw a repatriation program in a colleague of mine, in fact, works with us, senior in Tando's world, left in COVID to go live in Italy. He repatriated back. He can do his job from there. And they welcomed him home with like 10 years of tax rebate. But that's incentive, man.
That is incentive.
That's how you turn businesses around. That's how you get people to share. They go, there's stuff to share. Because especially big corporates got shareholders, man. They're not going to share. Shareholders are there for profit, right? That's the nature of the industry. You want to change that, you've got to change society. And I think
so. You get into RDP. I'm trying to bring it back on track.
Yeah, you got to do that, right?
Sure.
So I found management development studies by mistake. It was a filler subject, and I fell in love with it. I thought this makes sense because it was a concept that was born of World War II, where the US had bombed Japan and basically devastated economies and cultures. And it was a bit of a plaster, right? But it was mainly foreign aid, and how these countries rebuilt and turned around. They tried that in the third world, and I wouldn't even point it just at Africa, but the corruption killed it. So you had to start looking at different ways. And it was quite interesting to read these, but there was no way to practice it here. It wasn't on the cards. I couldn't get a job. It wasn't going to happen. And I started with a mate of mine by absolute mistake, really. We knew some guys that wanted some djembe drums. They were starting up their businesses. They were doing big corporate drumming sessions. And we knew a Senegalese guy, Bekai Mboop. I'll say his name because he owes me money. We met him. I went to Senegal in my early 20s. I went to the bank, man, with a piece of paper. Basically, I can't remember if I typed it up. If I did, it was in MS-DOS on there. But I'm pretty certain it was handwritten business plan. And the bank manager gave me the bucks, man.
That's brilliant.
You can't do it now.
No, you can't.
I'm a successful business. I've got successful businesses. Can't get the banks to engage. Different world, different context. Anyway.
Sorry, there's a way to get that right today. It's a conversation for another day.
I'd love to.
What was a bank then might be called something different today. If you know how to pitch to a church, a stokvel, that's where you're supposed to be getting that funding. But in banking, yes, that doesn't happen anymore.
Well, maybe that's part of the bigger conversation, then, right? But just quick one, finish that off. I went. We couldn't afford both of us, me and my mate, to go. So I went to Senegal, to Dakar, and I lived up there for a while. And we went around and I bartered. I took some stuff. I took jeans and creams and in those days Walkman and all sorts of things. And I did a lot of barter because it's a barter culture. Mainly, it's very Muslim. Another thing, the first time I realized how bloody ignorant I am is that I'd heard of the Muslim culture and faith, but I'd never engaged with it. I didn't know what it meant. So the first thing I did was offend someone. I tried to touch his Quran and he was so angry. And I was like, that's beautiful. Almost got my hands chopped off, and I quite quickly learned about that concept, living up there and being fairly, conscious of that. And in the end, I mean, I met ministers, I did all sorts of really interesting stuff. And the curios and things I was going to bring back was, I saw dollar signs, man. I'm going to be rich soon. And I took every shortcut and I broke every rule. And I shared this and did that and was easily led by some corrupt people ultimately, and came home and waited for that shipment for like 3 days. It didn't arrive, and then realized, wow, you've been had, man. And it was somewhere in that. It's not how you fall down, right? It's how you stand up. Somewhere in there, I remember getting a little bit angry. Angry is a good thing. It helps drive it helps drive me. And I put the hell in, and I got up, and I remember turning it on, going, okay, well, screw this, man. First, I've got a hole to fill. Let me go get that. And when I got a bartending job. And that gave me, interestingly, that little bit of dynamic and just a little bit of luck and a push. Gary Player said it, a famous South African said, the harder you train, the luckier you get. Not necessarily in those words, but it's true. The harder you work, the more you keep at it, the more you believe in yourself and you have a vision, the likelihood is you can get there. That's true. For anyone, anywhere. Break the rules, do what you got to do, but go for your goal. And sitting in this bar one day, I met a friend of mine that I'd known in another school, and she was saying to me, wow, okay, shame, man, I hear your story. And we've got at this company she was at, which was a fairly small little company, but it had a marketing company and had an interior design company that did turnkey services and built stuff and did quite well at the time. And she said to me, well, there's a job, you can be a film editor, or there's a project management job. I thought, film editor, man, sounds cool, I want to go do that. And I went along for the interview, and before I got there, I'd remembered that in all the diagnostic tests and things I'd done through varsity, because they didn't really want to let me in either, I had to go do all sorts of tests, was that I was more management aligned, my thinking and my way, my nature. So I thought, I'll try this project management thing, and they gave me the job and didn't teach me very much. In fact, they taught me a lot about how not to do stuff. But quite quickly after that, I got retrenched. And the whole department, they'd hired a really clever, qualified guy in that space. In those days, project management didn't come with a real qualification. They were kind of figuring it out. They were writing the books, to be fair. And angry again, right? Pissed off. And I thought, nah, man, I'm going to teach these guys how to do this. We're not gonna let them, kind of. In fact, I remember being pissed off. I didn't realize at the time it was an HR function. Put everyone in the room and ask them to reapply, right? Tell your business why you're good for the job. And I was so pissed off with the guy. I stuck my hand up and I said, listen, which is not my nature. I'm not in a big hurry to kind of make waves. No, man, if you don't know why I'm good here. And I was earning half of what I was in the bars. I mean, I used to work 3 jobs. In those days, I think I made about $7,000 cash a month, which was a lot of money. It was a good, decent amount of money. And now I was earning half, but in a better job, right? But I knew trajectory, stay on the ladder. And building that business, we started really as site managers, construction managers, shit kickers is what I call them. Boots on site, making sure that the contractors arrive and go. A foreman, for want of a better expression, in that kind of industry. And quite quickly, those businesses were starting to pay for it because they didn't always have the business. That's the other thing with the SA economy. There's not enough to really be principled, to go, I won't do business with that business because they like this. You take business. If it's there, you want to do it because there's just not enough. We've got to build that, so that you can then make decisions about what's right and wrong. If you're just trying to survive, that's a whole other hustle, right? And so for years, man, we went little bit until we realized that we had a lot to offer because we had come off the floor. We knew we grew, that knowledge, that maturation in that space gave us real purchase in the boardroom. You know what that takes. You know what it's going to cost. You know what this decision or that decision is going to do for you and where it's going to go. So you were far more informed and far more capable, practical. And I call them the macro and micro world. That contract management space is in the micro world. It's in the particularly complex space. It's where stuff happens on sites. It's logistics, production, implementation, etc. Versus the macro world, which is purely strategic. It's where we define how that project, so where that project and what its structure is and what its objectives are and what we're trying to achieve. So we grew into that, we matured into that, and so we lived in both. And quite quickly, we're still a project management company, but COVID again helped us see that what part of the value chain do you own? And I mean, we're medium, small to medium, going the other way, growing. If we can continue to do what we're doing, I think we'll achieve some particularly good things with young men and talent like we've got. And we're trying to grow it, right? We're constantly looking, and we're getting more and more international business, interestingly. And I'm not saying here, there, right? Sending people to do stuff.
That's impressive.
Around the world. Well, is it impressive? Is it luck? My father always told me,
people struggle from
you
South
make your
Africa
own
to get
luck,
that right.
man. You make your own luck. So I think,
It's impressive.
well, you know what they see in us is get it done people, man. People who are not scared. It's common around the world that South Africans, no matter culture, color, or creed, are considered really good at getting stuff done, working. They always say good at working, but it's more than that. And do yourself a favor. Look around the world at businessmen and business people that have made it and that do make it. So many of them, right from here, man. We just don't even hold them up as we don't do it. We do not celebrate our winners. Anyway, your question in that was, what do I do? So value chain, what do we own? None of it. We see all of it from this project management perspective. And what we also saw is a lot of older businesses dying out after COVID. They've had many years of success and now many years of an economic depression, since probably 2010 to 2008, 2009. That bubble hit us, or that ripple hit us 2010-ish. They went through that. They've gone through labor issues. The unions have a lot to answer for too. I think, in terms of not finding each other, maintaining this status, as opposed to, hey, we need to do business, not tank an already stuffed economy, So, and these are our leaders, right? So, I watched a lot of those businesses die out. So now there's gap. But how do you fill it if someone can't step in? So here's your value chain. Not only the gaps, but we're not going to have an industry if we don't start filling that. So we saw it as, again, the natural world. It's an ecosystem. You can't have that monster without all of these. And really our economy is held up by these little guys. Those big guys give us a playing field. It's these little guys that build that we should be celebrating and growing and building and helping people step up and not taking equity in the business, because that doesn't make sense. People must own and learn and burn, and have issues with that. It's the only way they grow, man. And that's where integrity is built. It's rising to your challenge. So we ended up building a couple of other businesses around that complement what we do, so that we're able to, which is quite difficult to get across, because you can't be the regulator, the policeman, the project manager setting this up and implement.
If you were to explain to a 10-year-old what your businesses do.
Oh man, I can't explain to you. How am I going to take? We make things happen. You give me a challenge, which is why I think, I believe you can change things. I've seen projects that should never have happen with willpower, strong intellect, strong challenging conversations, and then a will to pull it together, in everyone pulling. You put that dynamic together. In fact, some of the projects the guys are doing that Ndlovu specifically is involved with, I'm not going to mention names, have been internationally recognized out of nowhere. The guys, they're doing dynamic stuff that should never have happened. A lot of people tell you they could do it, but I can tell you they can't. And finding value in myself and my business and the people around me, I'll tell you they couldn't do it. There's no one can do it.
Debs, are you happy with the answer? Are you happy with the answer?
No, it seems like the answer might be off camera.
Oh, okay.
I think we must wrap up. And
we must.
This happened many years ago, right? And I just wanted to, last night I was thinking about it, and I remember we made these. And it was some years back, 2015-ish. And it was the first time as a country, especially all the whiteys, kind of stood up to go and Zuma must fall, right? Never seen it in my life. Never seen it.
Zuma must go.
At the same time, my neighbors downstairs were ANC Youth League serious businessmen, right? Serious. They had about 20 businesses and the fastest, coolest cars I've ever seen in my life. And we, as a business, came up with this concept, not me alone, but this concept of I'm a South African first. And it really resonated with me years after when I traveled to America to go and have a look what America was all about.
Yeah.
And I really didn't think I was going to like it. And I was amazed by it. There was a lot that was quite amazing. And there was a lot of similarity, really, in terms of its diversity. But they were all American first. They might be African American or Italian American, but they should really be saying it that I'm an American Italian.
Yeah.
Because that was the first thing they saw. And so I'm a South African first. We made a whole bunch of badges, and it's up to us to fill the color in, right?
Brilliant.
And the concept of South African first, I thought was a really cool thing. With these guys, we painted this massive banner in the cover of Night because the guys were there downstairs, and everyone was nervous that this would create huge conflict. And the next day, the whole business walked this thing in the march and hung it over the highway, and there's some pictures of it. And I think Soldier Boy, the MMA fighter, had taken one, and it kind of went a bit more viral. And thought, you see, there's some purchase in it. And we started thinking about people need something to align with.
Yeah.
They needed something to believe that's bigger than where they're at. And I thought that was a really good one. And a couple of years later, I found out that it wasn't a new concept, that I think, was it Herzog or one of them, when they were trying to sort out, it was a very white thing, but they finally kind of allowed English-speaking British ex-Brits who are now in the country after the gold rush and this and that to align with the Afrikaner or South African government. So that they could vote. And, really it was a little bit of a political maneuver, but he spoke about being South African first. And I thought it's a concept that's never really grabbed or had real traction. But, I thought maybe you can do something with that.
Thank you so much, Miles. The only time we actually do this, the only time, is when the Springboks are winning. It would be nice if we could get it right in many other spaces.
I think it's a great analogy, the Springboks, but it should be the thing that incubates and sparks more. Look at our athletes.
I'm South African first.
Yeah.
You fill in the color.
Yeah. You fill in the color. I'm a South African English-speaking white male. That's how, whatever. But I'm South African first. And that for me kind of resonated. And I hope that the interview went well. I trust that it helps your cause, and I trust that it doesn't upset ours. But I appreciate the time, man, and I'd like to, if I could, extend the invite outside of this space to come and sit with some people, because I think it would be great for you to challenge that forum of people and see what you get back, because I think it would be enlightening.
Miles, thank you so much for coming through. Thank you to Utando for organizing this.
Yeah, sure, man. Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
It's difficult for people to step out of their comfort zone and be on a public platform, to share their views, whether they deem controversial or not. And for the fact that you took us into your confidence, you shared your story, you're willing to admit certain blind spots, you acknowledge some of your advantages, but you believe in myself and Utebza, I'd like to think are stoic. So the idea of embracing struggle, grit, it's one of the things we admire, I think, or I admire about Afrikaners, that they very much about self-doing and go get its attitude. So thank you for coming through. I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to the relationship and work we're going to be building from here. Thank you.
Appreciate it. I'll leave you with a stoic comment. Amor fati.
Amor fati.
Amor fati. Love your fate.
Amor fati.
And remember, and Memento Mori was another one by Marcus Aurelius.
Oh, that's your boy.
Memento Mori.
Marcus Aurelius.
Remember you will die.
Remember you will die.
That you can be sent as that's got two meanings, right?
Yeah.
But if you remember it and keep you humble, amor fati, love your fate. I appreciate that one.
Thank you.
Go well.
Hey.